हरे कृष्णा प्रभु जी। हरे कृष्णा प्रभु जी। प्रभु जी, यू आर म्यूटेड।
Can we start?
Yes, Hare Krishna प्रभु जी, please accept our respectful obeisances.
Hi, Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasnibhya Vachaparithanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavyo Namo Namaha.
We welcome you प्रभु जी for today's session.
Hare Krishna. So I think I'll just say some prayers and we start.
Yes, please, please, yes, please प्रभु जी.
Om Jnanatimirasya Jnanashalakaya Chakshuramalitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Mano Vistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yukta Padakamalam Sri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragnastambitam Tam Sanjivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakam Scha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishnaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Tirtha Swami Iti Namini Namaste Krishna Padaya Prabhupada Asri Tatmani Sri Gaura Karuna Shakti Bhakti Tirtha Iti Namini Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishnaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namini Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvese Sashunyavadi Pasachade Satarini Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyaivacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gauravakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Mukam karoti vachalam pangum lagayate grim yatkri patamahan vande Shri Guru Dina Taranam Paramanam Madhavam Sri Chaitanya Ishwaram Lakanda Mandala Karam Vyapta Yena Characharam Tatpadam Dashitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. So you can make me a co-host so that I can share my PowerPoint.
Vaibhava ji, your co-host now.
All right, thank you. So everyone is welcome to the today's session. I think to make the presentation stable, I will shut down my video and only leave the slide, the PowerPoint on the screen, but my video will go off so that we don't have any issues with the internet. So I will do that now. And then the second thing is that we are supposed to be treating one chapter a day. So, and the last time we could not even go half of a chapter. So we had to change our approach. We had to change the method of facilitation. So what I want to do now is we'll just go through the chapter, the translations, and the slides till the end of the chapter. And then we will have some selected verses. We'll give some explanation of some selected verses. We cannot go through all the verses of the chapter. Otherwise, we cannot make it. So today, for instance, we have two chapters to cover, chapters 20 and 21 in 3 hours. So what I'll do is we ended up on verse 15 of chapter 20. So we're going to begin from verse 16. We'll just go through the translations and the slides. At the end of the chapter, then I will pick some verses for some explanation. Then we continue to chapter 21. In chapter 21 also, we would just go through the slides, the translations and the slides. And then when we finish, then we would pick some verses and try to give some explanation. Of course, if there are any questions from any of the students, they are always welcome at the end when we finish reading the slides and the translations. So these are the guiding principles we're going to be applying from now on so that we can cover the chapters as stipulated. So beginning with text 16, I think we ended up on text 15 the last time. So today we are starting with text 16. And generally, the first text, I prefer to chant the Sanskrit for the first verse, just to give us some auspiciousness. So I'm going to chant the 16th verse, the Sanskrit, but the rest of it, we're going to just read the translations. So chapter 20 of the 4th canto, verse 16. Varamcha mat kanchana manavedra vrinishwate ham gunasila yantritaha naham akai vaishlabas tapobir yoge navayat samachitavatihi. Translation. My dear king, I am very pleased. Sorry, I've not put up my video. Let me put up my video so that it doesn't disturb the, I've not put up my video. Put up my video first. put on my video. So maybe I have to.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yeah, I want to put up my video.
Prabhuji, it's seeming like internet connectivity is quite good today.
So
From the
I shall
beginning.
leave it.
Yes, if we face, can we say that time?
All right, so we'll leave it. If it is fluctuating, then we'll put it off.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right, so we'll go ahead. So the translation is, my dear king, I am very captivated by your elevated qualities and excellent behavior, and thus I am very favorably inclined toward you. You may therefore ask from me any benediction you like. One who does not possess elevated qualities and behavior cannot possibly achieve my favor simply by performance of sacrifices, severe austerities, or mystic yoga. But I always remain equipoised in the heart of one who is also equipoised in all circumstances. And the slide says, the Lord is pleased by the elevated character and behavior of a devotee. Lord Vishnu was very pleased with Maharaj Prithu's good character and behavior and offered him a benediction. The Lord openly says that performing great sacrifices or undergoing the austerities of mystic yoga practice cannot satisfy him. He is pleased only by elevated character and behavior. But these cannot develop unless one becomes a pure devotee of the Lord. Anyone who has developed unalloyed, unflinching devotional service unto the Lord develops his original good qualities as spirit soul. The spirit soul is part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and has all the good qualities of the Lord. When the spirit soul is contaminated by the material modes of nature, one is considered good or bad with reference to the material qualities. But when one is transcendental to all material qualities, all the good qualities come out. So we go to text 17. Somebody can read 17 and then the slide.
The great saint Maitreya continued, my dear Vidura, in this way Maharaj Prithu, the conqueror of the entire world, accepted the instruction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead on his head. Anything spoken by the Personality of Godhead should be taken with great care, attention, and respect. One should accept the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead by bowing down at the lotus feet of the Lord. This means that anything spoken by the Personality of Godhead should be taken as it is, with great care and attention and with great respect. It is not our business to amend the words of the Supreme Personality of Godhead or make addition or alteration, as it has become a custom for many so-called scholars and swamis who comment on the words of Bhagavad Gita. Here, the practical example of how to accept the instruction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is shown by Prithu Maharaj. Srimad Bhagavatam 4:20-17.
Thank you. Next, 18.
As King Indra was standing by, he became ashamed of his own activities and before King Prithu to touch his lotus feet. But Prithu Maharaj immediately embraced him in great ecstasy and gave up all envy against him for his having stolen the horse meant for sacrifice. Indra falls at Prithu Maharaj's feet and the king picks him and embraced him. Indra decided to fall down at the lotus feet of King Prithu, but the king was so magnanimous, a Vaishnava, that he did not want Maharaj Indra to fall down at his feet. Instead, King Prithu immediately picked him and embraced him, and both of them forgot all the past incidents. Both King Indra and Maharaj Prithu were envious and angry with each other, but since both of them were Vaishnavas or servants of Lord Vishnu, it was their duty to adjust the cause of their envy. This is also a first class example of cooperative behavior between Vaishnavas. In the present days, however, because people are not Vaishnavas, they fight perpetually among one another and are vanquished without finishing the mission of human life.
Thank you. So the next person, somebody can read the next one. 19.
Hare Krishna. King Prithu King Prithu abundantly worshipped the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who was so merciful to him. While worshipping the lotus feet of the Lord, Prithu Maharaj gradually increased his ecstasy in devotional service. Many types of transcendental ecstasies manifest in the body of a devotee. When various ecstasies appear in the body of a devotee, it is to be understood that his devotional service has become perfect. There are many types of transcendental ecstasies in the form of crying, laughing, perspiring, falling down, and crying like a madman. All these symptoms are sometimes visible on the body of a devotee. They are called Ashtasattvika Vikara, which means 8 kinds of transcendental transformations. They are never to be imitated, but when a devotee actually becomes perfect, these symptoms are visible on his body.
Thank you. Text 20. Somebody else can read.
Text 20. The Lord was just about to leave, but because he was so greatly inclined toward the behavior of King Prithu, he did not depart. Seeing the behavior of Maharaj Prithu with his lotus eyes, he was detained because he is always a well-wisher of his devotees. Slide. The Lord is equal to everyone, but particularly to one who engages in his service, he is very much inclined. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is always very inclined toward his devotee and is always thinking of the devotee's well-being. This is not partiality. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, the Lord is equal to everyone. Samoham sarva bhuteshu. But to one who is particularly engages in his service, he is very much inclined. In another place, the Lord says that a devotee always exists in his heart, and he also exists always in the heart of the devotee. The special inclination of the Supreme Personality of Godhead for his pure devotee is not unnatural, nor is it partiality. For example, sometimes a father has several children, but he has special affection for one child who is very much inclined toward him. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 20, Slok 20.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Text 21.
The original King Maharaj Prithu, his eyes full of tears and his voice fluttering and choked up, could neither see the Lord very distinctly nor speak to address the Lord in any way. He simply embraced the Lord within his heart and remained standing in that way with folded hands. Maharaj Prithu, a great devotee and hero who conquered all undesirable elements. Just as Krishna is addressed in the Brahma Samhita as Adi Purusha, the original personality, so King Prithu, being an empowered incarnation of the Lord, is referred to in this verse as Adi Rajaha, the original or an ideal king. He was a great devotee and at the same time a great hero who conquered over all undesirable elements in his kingdom. He was so powerful that he was equal in fighting to Indra, the king of heaven. He gave protection to his citizens, keeping them engaged in pious activities and devotion to the Lord. He did not collect a single cent of taxes from the citizen without being able to give them protection from all calamities.
Text 22.
Supreme Personality of Godhead stood with his lotus feet almost touching the ground while he rested the front of his hand on the raised shoulder of Garuda, the enemy of the snakes. Maharaj Prithu, wiping the tears from his eyes, tried to look upon the Lord, but it appeared that the king was not fully satisfied by looking at him. Thus, the king offered the following prayers. Lord Vishnu did not touch the ground when he first appeared before Prithu Maharaj. The significant point in this verse is that the Lord was standing above the ground, almost touching it. The residents of the upper planetary systems, beginning from Brahmaloka down to Svargaloka, are so advanced in spiritual life that when they come to visit this or similar other lower planetary system, they keep their weightlessness. This means that they can stand without touching the ground. Lord Vishnu is the supreme personality of Godhead, but because he lives in one of the planetary systems within this universe, he sometimes plays as if one of the demigods of this universe. When he first appeared before Prithu Maharaj, he was not touching the ground of this earth. But when he was fully satisfied with the behavior and character of Maharaj Prithu, he immediately acted as the supreme personality of Godhead.
Thank you. Text 23.
Jia Mataji.
Yeah, go ahead.
Text 23. My dear Lord, you are the best of the demigods. You can offer benedictions. Why, therefore, should any learned person ask you for benedictions that are meant for living entities who are bewildered by the modes of nature? Such benedictions are available automatically, even in the lives of living entities who are suffering in hellish conditions. My dear Lord, you can certainly bestow merging into your existence, but I do not wish to have such a benediction. Devotees receive different kind of benediction from the Lord. There are different kinds of benedictions according to a person's demands. For karmis, the best benediction is promotion to the higher planetary system, where the duration of life is very long and the standard of living and happiness is very high. There are others, namely jnanis and yogis, who want the benediction of merging into the existence of the Lord. This is called Kaivalya. The Lord is therefore addressed as Kaivalyapati, the master or Lord of the benediction, known as Kaivalya. But devotees receive a different type of benediction from the Lord. Devotees are anxious neither for the heavenly planets nor for merging into the existence of the Lord. According to devotees, Kaivalya or merging into the existence of the Lord is considered as good as hell.
Thank you. Text 24.
Text 24.
Yeah.
My dear Lord, I therefore do not wish to have the benediction of merging into your existence, a benediction in which there is no existence of the nectarian beverage of your lotus feet. I want a benediction of at least 1 million years, for thus I may be able to hear about the glories of your lotus feet from the mouths of your pure devotees. Slide. Glories of the Lord emanate from the mouth of pure devotees who speak from the core of their hearts. Maharaj Prithu wanted to have 1 million ears to hear the glories of the lotus feet of the Lord. He specifically mentioned that the glories of the Lord should emanate from the mouths of pure devotees who speak from the cores of their hearts. It is stated in the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 1, Shlok 3, Shukmukhad Amrita Drava Samyutam. The nectar of Srimad Bhagavatam became more relishable because it emanated from the mouth of Srila Shukdev Goswami. One might think that these glories of the Lord can be heard from anywhere, from the mouths of either devotees or non-devotees. But here it is specifically mentioned that the glories of the Lord must emanate from the mouth of pure devotees. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 20, Shlok 24.
Thank you. Text 25.
My dear Lord, you are glorified by the selected verses uttered by great personalities, Such glorification of your lotus feet is just like saffron particles. When the transcendental vibration from the mouths of great devotees carries the aroma of saffron dust of your lotus feet, the forgetful living entity gradually remembers his eternal relationship with you. Devotees thus gradually come to the right conclusion about the value of life. My dear Lord, I therefore do not need any other benediction but the opportunity to hear from the mouth of your pure devotee. In material existence, everyone has forgotten our eternal relationship with the Supreme. The transcendental vibration from the mouth of a pure devotee is so powerful that it can revive the living entity's memory of his eternal relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In our material existence, under the influence of illusionary Maya, we have almost forgotten our eternal relationship with the Lord, exactly like a man sleeping very deeply who forgets his duties. In the Vedas, it is said that every one of us is sleeping under the influence of Maya. We must get up from the slumber and engage in the right service, for thus we can properly utilize the facility of this human form of life.
Thank you. 26.
My dear, highly glorified Lord, if one in the association of your devotees hears even once the glories of your activities, he does not, unless he is nothing but an animal, give up the association of devotees. For no intelligent person would be so careless as to leave their association. The perfection of chanting and hearing about your glories was even accepted by the goddess of fortune, who desired to hear of your unlimited activities and transcendental glories. Aryan family considered the most elevated community because they adopted Vedic civilization. The association of devotees, Arya Sangama, is the most important factor in this world. The word Arya refers to those who are advancing spiritually. In the history of the human race, the Aryan family is considered to be the most elevated community in the world because it adopts the Vedic civilization. The Aryan family is distributed all over the world and is known as Indo-Aryan. In prehistoric days, all of the members of the Aryan family followed the Vedic principles and therefore they became spiritually advanced. The kings, known as Rajarishis, were so perfectly educated as Kshatriyas or protectors of the citizens and so greatly advanced in spiritual life that there was not a bit of trouble for the citizens.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Oh,
Hare
Hare Krishna
Krishna.
Prabhuji, sorry. Prabhuji, can you please explain light? Can you please throw some light on this?
What I want to do is that can you write down the question? Because if we start talking now, you
Okay.
can write down the question at the end of the chapter, then we take it.
Okay, fine.
I think, yeah. Text 27.
Is this Santaram Balaram Prabhuji?
Now I wish to in the service of the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and to serve just like the good goddess of fortune, who carries a lotus flower in her hand, because his lordship, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the reservoir of all transcendental qualities. I am afraid that the goddess of fortune and I would quarrel because both of us would be attentively engaged in the same service. In the Vedas, the Supreme Lord is called the Supreme Eternal of all eternals. The Lord is here described, addressed as Akhila Purushottam, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord of the entire creation. Purusha means the enjoyer, and Uttam means the best. There are different kinds of Purushas or enjoyers within the universe. Generally, they can be divided into three classes: those who are conditioned, those who are liberated, and those who are eternal. In the Vedas, the Supreme Lord is called the Supreme Eternal of all eternal, Nityo Nityanam. Both the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the living entities are eternal. The Supreme Eternals are the Vishnu Tattva or Lord Vishnu and his expansions. So Nitya refers to the personality of Godhead, beginning from Krishna to Mahavishnu, Narayan, and other expansions of Lord Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam 4:20-27.
Thank you. 28.
Translation. Text 28. My dear Lord of the universe, the goddess of fortune Lakshmi is the mother of the universe, and yet I think that she may be angry with me because of my intruding upon her service and acting on that very platform to which she is so much attached. Yet I am hopeful that even though there is some misunderstanding, you will take my part, for you are very much inclined to the poor, and you always magnify even insignificant service unto you. Therefore, even though she becomes angry, I think that there is no harm for you, because you are so self sufficient that you can do without her. Why should Lakshmi be angry with an insignificant devotee like Prithu Maharaj? Mother Lakshmi ji, the goddess of fortune, is well known for always massaging the lotus feet of Lord Narayan. She is an ideal wife because she takes care of Lord Narayan in every detail. She takes care not only of his lotus feet but of the household affairs of the Lord as well. She cooks nice foods for him, fans him while he eats, smoothens sandalwood pulp on his face, and sets his bed and sitting places in the right order. In this way, she is always engaged in the service of the Lord, and there is hardly any opportunity for any other devotee to intrude upon his daily activities. Prithu Maharaj was therefore almost certain that his intrusion into the service of the goddess of fortune would irritate her and cause her to become angry with him. But why should Mother Lakshmi, the mother of the universe, be angry with an insignificant devotee like Prithu Maharaj? Srimad Bhagavatam 4.20.28.
Thank you.
Great saintly persons who are always liberated, take to your devotional service, because only by devotional service can one be relieved from the illusions of material existence. Oh my Lord, there is no reason for the liberated souls to take shelter at the lotus feet, at your lotus feet, except that such souls are constantly thinking of your lotus feet. The highest perfection of life is to simply hear the glories of the Lord. Prithu Maharaj therefore concluded that liberated persons taking to the devotional path have acquired the ultimate goal of life. If liberation were the end in itself, there would be no question of a liberated persons taking to the devotional service. In other words, the transcendental bliss derived from self-realization known as Atmananda is very insignificant in the presence of a in the presence of a bliss derived from devotional service to the lotus feet of the Lord. Prithu Maharaj therefore concluded that he would simply hear the glories of the Lord constantly and thus engage his mind upon the lotus feet of the Lord. This is the highest perfection of life.
Thank you. 30.
My dear Lord, what you have said to your unalloyed devotee is certainly very much bewildering. The allurements which you offer in the Vedas are certainly not suitable for pure devotees. People in general are bound by the sweet words of the Vedas, and they engage themselves again and again in fruitive activities, enamored by the results of their actions. Those engaged in Karma Kanda and Jnana Kanda are doomed. Srila Narottama Das Thakur, a great acharya of the Gaudiya Sampradaya, has said that persons who are very much attached to the fruitive activities of the Vedas, namely Karma Kanda and Jnana Kanda, are certainly doomed. In the Vedas, there are three categories of activities known as Karma Kanda, fruitive activities, Jnana Kanda, philosophical research, and Upasana Kanda, worship of different demigods for receiving material benefits. Those who are engaged in Karma Kanda and Jnana Kanda are doomed in the sense that everyone is doomed who is entrapped by the material body, whether it is a body of a demigod, a king, a lower animal, or whatever. The sufferings of the threefold miseries of material nature are the same
For all. 31.
My Lord, due to your illusory energy, all living beings in this material world have forgotten their real constitutional position. and out of ignorance, they are always desirous of material happiness in the form of society, friendship, and love. Therefore, please do not ask me to take some material benefits from you, but as a father, not waiting for the son's demand, does everything for the benefit of the son. Please bestow upon me whatever you think best for me. Pure devotees fully surrender unto the lotus feet of the Lord, and the Lord take charge of them. It is the duty of the son to depend upon his father without asking anything from him. The good son has faith that the father knows best how to benefit him. Similarly, a pure devotee does not ask anything from the Lord for material benefit, nor does he ask anything for spiritual benefit. The pure devotee is fully surrendered unto the lotus feet of the Lord, and the Lord takes charge of him. The Father knows the necessities of the Son and supplies them, and the Supreme Lord knows the necessities of the living entities and supplies them sumptuously. Therefore, the Ishopanishad states that everything in this material world is complete, Purnam Idam. The difficulty is that due to forgetfulness, the living entities create unnecessary demands and entangle themselves in material activities. 4:20:31.
Thank you. 32.
The great sage Maitreya continued by saying that the Lord, the seer of the universe, after hearing Prithu Maharaj's prayer, addressed the king. My dear king, may you always be blessed by engaging in my devotional service. Only by such purity of purpose as you yourself very intelligently express can one cross over the insurmountable illusory energy of Maya. The only means for transcending the illusory energy is devotional service. No one can transcend the illusory energy of Maya by fruitive activity, speculative philosophy, or mystic yoga. The only means for transcending illusory energy is devotional service. As the Lord Himself states, Mam eva ye prapadante, mayam etam tarantite. Bhagavad Gita 7.14. If one wants to cross over the ocean of material existence, there is no alternative than to take to devotional service. A devotee, therefore, should not care for any material position, whether in heaven or in hell. A pure devotee should always engage in the service of the Lord, for that is his real occupation. Simply by sticking to that position, one can overcome the stringent laws of material nature. Srimad Bhagavatam 4.20.32.
Thank you. 33.
My dear king, O protector of the citizens, henceforward be very careful to execute my orders and not to mislead by anything. Anyone who lives in that way, simply carrying out my orders faithfully, will always find good fortune all over the world. The sum and the substance of the religious life is to execute the order of the Supreme Lord. The sum and substance of religious life is to execute the orders of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and one who does so is perfectly religious. In Bhagavad Gita 18.65, the Supreme Lord Krishna says, Man mana bhav mad bhaktah. Just think of me always and become my devotee. Furthermore, the Lord says, Sardharman paritajya mam ekam sharanam praja. Give up all kind of material engagement and simply surrender unto me. Bhagavad Gita 18.66. This is the primary principle of religion. Anyone who directly executes such an order from the personality of Godhead is actually a religious person. Others are described as pretenders, for there are many activities going on throughout the world in the name of religion, which are not actually religious. For one who executes the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, however, there is only good fortune throughout the world. 4:20:33 purport.
Thank
The
you.
great saint,
Go
the
ahead.
great saint Maitreya told Vidura, the Supreme Personality of Godhead appreciated the meaningful prayers of Maharaj Prithu. Thus, after being properly worshipped by the king, the Lord benedicted him and decided to depart. The purpose of the Lord's taking birth to establish devotional service, the perfection of religion. One must understand the transcendental birth of the Lord and the devotee. The purpose of the Lord's taking birth is to establish devotional service, which is the perfect system of religion, and the purpose of the birth of a devotee is to broadcast the same system of religion or the Bhakti cult all over the world. Prithu Maharaj was an incarnation of the power of the Lord to spread the Bhakti cult, and the Lord blessed him to remain fixed in his position. Thus, when the king refused to accept any material benediction, the Lord appreciated that refusal very much.
Thank you. 35 and 36.
King Prithu worshipped the demigods, the great sages, the inhabitants of Prithaloka, the inhabitants of Gandharvaloka, and those of Siddhaloka, Charanloka, Panagaloka, Kinnarloka, Apsaraloka, the earthly planets, and the planets of the birds. He also worshipped many other living entities who presented themselves in the sacrificial arena. With folded hands, he worshipped all these, as well as the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the personal associates of the Lord, by offering sweet words and as much wealth as possible. After this function, they all went back to their respective abodes, following in the footsteps of Lord Vishnu. Beyond the planetary systems in the material sky, there is Paravyum, the spiritual planets. We have full information from the Vedic literature that in each and every planet, both material and spiritual, there are living entities of varied intelligence. The Earth is one of the planets of the Bhurloka planetary system. There are 6 planetary systems above Bhurloka and 7 planetary systems below it. Therefore, the entire universe is known as Chaturdash Bhuvan, indicating that it has 14 different planetary systems. Beyond the planetary system in the material sky, there is another sky, which is known as Paravyum, or the spiritual sky, where there are spiritual planets. The inhabitants of those planets engage in varieties of loving service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which include different asas or relationships known as Dasirasya, Sakhirasya, Vatsalyarasya, Madhuryarasya, and above all, Parikyarasya. 420, 35, 36.
Thank you. 37.
The infallible Supreme Personality of Godhead, having captivated the minds of the king and the priest who were present, returned to his abode in the spiritual sky. Because a living entity falls down from his real engagement, he gets a material body. Because the Supreme Personality of Godhead is all spiritual, he can descend from the spiritual sky without changing his body. And thus he is known as Achyuta or infallible. When a living entity falls down to the material world, however, he has to accept a material body, and therefore in his material embodiment, he cannot be called Achyuta because he falls down from his real engagement in the service of the Lord. The living entity gets a material body to suffer or try to enjoy in the miserable material conditions of life. Therefore, the fallen living entity is Achyuta, whereas the Lord is called Achyuta. The Lord was attractive for everyone, not only the king, but also the priestly order, who were very much addicted to the performance of Vedic rituals. Srimad Bhagavatam 4.20.37.
Thank you. 38.
King Prithu then offered his respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the Supreme Lord of all demigods. Although not an object of material vision, the Lord revealed himself to the sight of Maharaj Prithu. After offering obeisances to the Lord, the king returned to his home. Developing spiritual eyes by the process of pure devotional service. The Supreme Lord is not visible to material eyes, but when the material senses are inclined to the transcendental loving service of the Lord and are thus purified, the Lord reveals himself to the vision of the devotee. Avyakta means unmanifested. Although the material world is the creation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is unmanifested to the material eyes. Maharaj Prithu, however, developed spiritual eyes by his pure devotional service. Here, therefore, the Lord is described as Sandar Shitatma. For he reveals himself to the vision of the devotee, although he is not visible to ordinary eyes. 4:20:38 purport.
Okay, that brings us to the end of this chapter. chapter 20. So, any questions before I touch upon the selected verses? Martin, you had a question you wanted to ask? Yes, please.
Prabhuji, can you please show the verse, the slide for verse 16?
Verse 16, eh?
Yes,
16 or 16?
16, 1 6. Verse number
1.
16.
Okay, that's the beginning.
Yes.
Here is it.
There is a line that when the spirit soul is contaminated by the material modes of nature, one is considered good or bad with the reference to the material qualities. What? Please help me understand with reference to the material qualities.
Yes. In fact, yesterday, somebody in a class from Dubai, we're treating the third canto. He asked a question which is similar to this. He said, the Supreme Lord is all good. So where does bad come here? Because everything is emanating from Krishna. So if Krishna is all good, where does bad or evil come from? That was the question some devotee asked me yesterday. So, and the answer is just what is here. See, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, everything about him is good. There is nothing bad about the Supreme Lord. So then the question is, where does evil come from? Where does bad things come from? So bad things come from the modes of nature. When the modes are in equilibrium, that is before the material manifestation, the modes are in equilibrium. And because they are in equilibrium, they do not react. And they are in a very subtle form. We can say they're in a spiritual form, in a subtle form, in the equilibrium, no action, no reaction. Everything is transcendental, everything is good. But because of the desire of the living entity to enjoy separately from the Supreme Lord, the Supreme Lord has to let loose the modes of nature. They have to become active by creating the Mahatattva. And within the Mahatattva, then we have the three modes of material nature, then we have the time factor, then we have the false ego, and then these begin to react. When the material modes begin to react, then there and then evil comes. There and then bad things come. The modes of nature, the reaction of the modes of nature produces good and bad. As far as the Supreme Personality of Godhead is concerned, there is nothing good and bad. The Lord is transcendental. Everything about Krishna is transcendental. But when the modes of nature are allowed to react or interact, then the modes of nature produces good and bad. So here, it is said when the spirit soul is contaminated by the material modes of nature, one is considered good or bad with reference to the material qualities. Actually, the living entity is transcendental. Krishna is transcendental. Mama evam so jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana. Krishna is transcendental, and the living entity being part and parcel of Krishna is also transcendental. But when the living entity identifies with the modes of nature, then the modes of nature will produce a good situation and a bad situation. by their reactions. So bad and good is only limited to the material world. In the transcendental world, there is no bad and good. Everything is transcendental. So it is due to the activities of the living entities in the material world that creates bad and creates good. Is that okay, Mataji?
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. And Prabhuji, the solution to transcendent the modes of material nature is only to just to serve the lotus feet of Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Exactly. Mam chayo vyabhicharini bhakti yogena sevate sagunai samatityaitam brahma bhuyaya kalpate. That is the solution. One who is engaged in vyabhicharini bhakti, devotional service, without deviation, without a fall down, such a person can transcend the modes of material nature and come to the spiritual plane. So that is the solution. Devotional service.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, can you please show slide number 18 as well?
Number 18, okay. Yeah.
Maybe I missed. I just forgot to. Okay.
You
I'm
didn't take notes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Can we
what?
look at
26 for sure. I have noted down.
26.
Prabhuji request you to please make this understand Arya Sangam and what is this verse is referring Indo-Aryan Aryan.
Okay. It said the Aryan family considered the most elevated community because they adopted the Vedic civilization. The association of devotees, Arya Sangama, is the most important factor in this world. The word Arya refers to those who are advancing spiritually. In the history of human race, the Aryans family is considered to be the most elevated community in the world because it adopts the Vedic civilization. The Aryan family is distributed all over the world and is known as the Indo-Aryan. In prehistoric days, all of the members of the Aryan family followed the Vedic principles, and therefore they became spiritually advanced. The kings known as Raja Rishis were so perfectly educated as Kshatriyas, or protectors of the citizens, and so greatly advanced in spiritual life that there was not a bit of trouble for the citizens. So Aryans or Aryans simply means devotees, actually. The first civilization on earth were devotees. They were all worshippers of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They have no other activity except devotional service, like the age of Satya Yuga. In Satya Yuga, everyone was Paramahamsa. Everyone was righteous. Everyone was spiritual. Everyone was engaged in devotional service. So Satya Yuga is described as a golden age because there was no crime. There was no evil. There was nothing bad in Satya Yuga. So everyone is Aryan, advanced, spiritually inclined. That is the Aryans. But as the time progresses, Satya Yuga expired and we entered into Treta Yuga. In Treta Yuga, a quarter of the people gave up their Aryan inclinations. 3/4 were still inclined to the Aryan way of life. But as time progresses into Dwarapa Yuga, 50% of the population were still inclined to Aryan way of life, and 50% had given up Aryan way of life. Then as we progress into Kali Yuga, 75% of the inhabitants of Kali Yuga have given up Aryan way of life, and only 25% are still inclined to the Aryan way of life. In other words, inclined to devotional service. So anyone who is engaged in devotional service and following the Vedic tradition, the Vedic scriptures, is considered an Aryan. In fact, the first class of human beings that occupied the Earth planet, they were described as Aryans because they were all natural devotees of the Lord, and they all abided by the instructions of the Lord. They all followed the Vedic scriptures. And so anyone who is doing that, even today, can be described as an Aryan. So the devotees who are engaged in devotional service, we can describe all of them as Aryans because they are following the process of Bhakti and they are following the Vedic scriptures. So Aryan simply means those who are devoted to the cause of the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, can I ask one more last question?
Yes, please go ahead.
Text 27.
Which text?
27, next one.
27, next one, okay.
I have understood, but I would request that if you can make me more understand this, that how here the Lakshmi Ji's contest is there. I think it's 27 or what? Lakshmi Ji, I think it's 28 maybe. The Lakshmi Ji concepts were there that she was not 28,
Happy
28,
with
28, 28. I'm so sorry, 28. The next one, where the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi Ji, is the mother of universe. 28.
Yeah, this 28.
Yeah, I have understood, but I would request you if you can please explain this as well, the last one. That how
Okay.
what exactly Prithu Maharaj is saying and about Lakshmi Ji.
Okay, let's see. It says, why should Lakshmi be angry with an insignificant devotee like Prithu Maharaj? Mother Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, is well known for always massaging the lotus feet of Lord Narayan. She is an ideal wife because she takes care of Lord Narayan in every detail. She takes care not only of his lotus feet, but the household affairs of the Lord as well. She cooks nice foods for him, fans him while he eats, smoothing sandalwood pulp on his face, sets his bed, sitting place in the right order. In this way, she always engaged in the service of the Lord. And there is hardly any opportunity for any devotee to intrude upon his daily activities. Prithu Maharaj was therefore almost certain that his intrusion into the service of the goddess of fortune would irritate her and cause her to become angry with him. But why should Mother Lakshmi, the mother of the universe, be angry with an insignificant devotee like Prithu Maharaj? So this is Prithu Maharaj's perception. Prithu Maharaj is envisaging that he wants to become a very intimate servant of Lord Vishnu. He wants to serve Lord Vishnu on the platform of Lakshmi Ji. Actually, it's like he wants to compete with Mother Lakshmi in the service of Lord Vishnu. And so naturally, he knows that Lord Vishnu is nicely served by Mother Lakshmi. So if he wants to compete with Mother Lakshmi, if he wants to be very intimate with Vishnu, just as Mother Lakshmi, he is anticipating that Mother Lakshmi may see him as a competitor. and therefore Manalakshmi may become angry with him. But then he sums up the whole thing by saying, but why should Manalakshmi, the mother of the universe, be angry with an insignificant devotee like Prithu Maharaj? In other words, Manalakshmi is a well-wisher of all the devotees. Manalakshmi is the mother of devotional service. Manalakshmi is the internal potency of the Lord. He nourishes the Lord and nourishes the devotees. So why should Manalakshmi become angry with him if he decides to render such intimate service with Manalakshmi? So Prithu is thinking. He is envisaging that if I become too intimate with Vishnu due to devotional service, I may be causing Manalakshmi some anxiety, and Manalakshmi may become angry with me. But at the same time, he is realizing that Manalakshmi is a well-wisher of all the devotees. Manalakshmi is a maintainer of all the devotees. So why should Manalakshmi become angry with him because he's rendering such intimate service? Actually, Manalakshmi wants to see all the devotees engaged in the service of the Lord. Just like Srimati Radharani, she wants to engage everyone in the service of the Lord. So if a devotee is able to please the Supreme Lord in such a way that the Lord is satisfied, that should give pleasure to Manalakshmi. That should give pleasure to Srimati Radharani, not the otherwise. That is a prayer from one of the Puranas, which says that it says, Karuna Vahini, that Srimati Radharani, she is so merciful. She's the ocean of mercy. And she is always inclined giving mercy to the devotees. So she wants to see everyone engaged in Krishna service. She is the mother of devotion, and she wants to see everyone engaged in Krishna service. So it is her greatest pleasure to see everyone engaged in Krishna service. Radhe Brindavani Dishe Karanam Vahini. Radharani is so pleased to see everyone engaged in Krishna service. Similarly, Manalakshmi is so pleased to see everyone engaged in Krishna service. So what is the question of her becoming angry? Because a devotee is intimate with the Lord? No. So it is Prithu Maharaj who is envisaging that his intimacy may create some inconvenience for Manalakshmi and make her angry. But the question is, why should Manalakshmi be angry for a devotee like Prithu Maharaj who wants to render intimate service to the Lord? It is their duty. It is their duty to make sure that every living entity is serving the Lord in a very wonderful way. So if he is able to do that, why should Manalakshmi become angry? So that should be understood as Prithu's. It is not Manalakshmi who is speaking. It is Prithu who is speaking. Is that okay?
Thank you so very much, Prabhuji. Yes, very nicely I understood. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, can I ask one more question?
Yes.
Okay. Prabhuji, it has written here that Mother Lakshmi, she not only just gives foot massage to Lord Narayan, she also cooks very nicely, fans Lord, and applies sandalwood pulp. So like these. So I was having one, and I just wanted to ask for long that service in Goloka. So I wanted to ask that here when we render few service because we are in this material body, so we get tired. So in the spiritual world, what happens like that we hear about Mother Yashoda also when she was running after Krishna in Damodar Leela, she was mesmerizing and things were there. So how it is like that we will be able to render n number of services. And in Krishna Balram pastime also we heard that Balram sometimes he feels tired and Krishna gives massage to Balram. So I just wanted to know something little bit like tiredness in spiritual world, how to understand, if you can please tell.
Well, we have to understand that in Gokul is the descriptions of Mother Yashoda perspiring, Balaram getting tired, that Krishna has to fan him, massage his lotus feet. All of these activities in Gokul. And Gokul is actually the playground of Krishna in the material universe. So some of these activities are just to enhance the devotees' relationship with the Lord. So in Gokul, which is in this universe, the activities of the Lord resemble the activities of man. But this is to nourish the relationships of the devotees. The activities, they are enacted and they may appear to be material, but they're not. But in order to nourish the relationship, to enhance the enjoyment of the devotees and the Lord, these pastimes are enacted. It does not mean that they are going through some material situation. It does not mean they are having some material experiences. From the external, we may see them as such, but these are just to enhance the sweetness of the relationship. Maria Yashoda running after Krishna, Maria Yashoda trying to tie Krishna, bind Krishna. These are just activities enacted to enhance the loving relationships that exist between the Lord and his devotees. In the spiritual realm, we have a different scenario. There is no tiredness in the spiritual realm. There is no hunger in the spiritual realm. There is nothing mundane in the spiritual realm. Nevertheless, for the purpose of pastimes, for the purpose of enhancing the relationship, enhancing the joy of the pastimes, these things may be enacted. Like we see here, it's talking about Mahalakshmi cooking for Krishna, cooking for Vishnu, supplying sandalwood pulp, massaging his feet. All of these things may appear that the Lord is tired, the Lord needs some attention, and so on and so forth, as if the Lord is in a material environment and needs all these things. They are not required. But as a matter of service, as a matter of enhancing the devotee's love, the Lord makes arrangement for these things to happen so that the devotees will constantly be engaged in the service of the Lord. So there are two scenarios. One scenario is in the spiritual world where everything is transcendentally situated. But because the Lord wants to he wants to interact with his devotees, service opportunities are created. And the devotees take advantage of these service opportunities to enhance their loving relationship with the Lord. The same thing is reflected in Gokul. Gokul is the replica of the spiritual world in the material world. So same activities in the spiritual world are also replicated in Gokul, just to attract the souls, to attract the devotees, to give opportunity to the devotees to engage in the Lord's service. Anugrahaya bhaktanam manusham deha asitaha. When the Lord appears in the material world, he does so just to create an opportunity for the pleasure of the devotees. That is the whole purpose. When the Lord descends in the material world and enacts his pastimes, it is just out of his costless mercy, anugrahaya, so that he can give opportunity to the devotees to engage in his loving service. It is done just to attract the living entities to engage in devotional service. But the Lord really doesn't need these things. But he gives opportunity to the living entities to engage in these things. You see, the relationship, I mean, the living entity, the soul, they have to relate to the Lord. They have to engage in some activity with the Lord. The spiritual world is characterized by loving devotional service. So it is mentioned somewhere in I think the third canto, that the Lakshmis, they line up in the spiritual world with brooms, wanting to clean the palace of Mahavishnu, wanting to clean the palace of Vishnu, even though there is no dust, even though there is no rubbish, there is nothing to clean. But the Lakshmis, they are always looking for an opportunity to render some service. So the service attitude, the service mood is enhanced by the Lord by offering all these opportunities for the Lakshmis, for the devotees, for the gopis, for everyone to be engaged in the service of the Lord. And that is what gives pleasure to the devotees as well. So all these services that I mentioned, it is the Lord who facilitates it, the Lord arranges it just to allow his devotees to be engaged in devotional service. It is not that without these services, the Lord is not complete. The Lord is complete in every aspect, but the relationship is a relationship of loving service. So there must be an opportunity for everyone to render some service in the spiritual world. So the Lord makes arrangement for this service to go on eternally, perpetually. Is that okay?
It is really blissful to have answered from your lotus mouth, Prabhuji. Thank you so very much.
Prabhupada's mercy. This is Prabhupada's mercy.
Yes. Prabhuji, can you, I was just one thing I wanted to ask. We know that every soul has a fixed service in the Golok Vrindavan. We have a turn, and that service is fixed. Nobody can take that service. This is fixed for us. And we hear also that Hanumanji has so much service attitude that he is ready to do all the service of Lord Rama. And one more question with this, that please help me to understand Prabhupada mood, that when, because there is also a competition for service, like of book distribution. So please help me to understand this transcendental competition in the service, Prabhupada mode.
Yes, there is competition even in the spiritual sky. In Goloka Vrindavan, there is competition. There are the left-wing gopis and the right-wing gopis. The left-wing gopis is headed by Srimati Radharani, and the right-wing gopis is headed by Chandravali. And each group of gopis, they want to satisfy Krishna to the maximum. But there is no envy. That is the difference. In the material world, our competition is always characterized by envy. But in the spiritual sky, there is no envy. Everyone is trying to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead to the maximum. And they are happy to see others excel. That is the difference. So that competition is a healthy competition. But in the material world, because we are contaminated by the modes of nature, the modes of nature are churning our hearts, churning our minds. As soon as we see somebody doing better than us, we immediately get envious. As soon as somebody is going ahead of us, we feel disturbed. So that is the difference between material life and spiritual life. The more we are advancing, the more we shall appreciate those who are making progress. The more we shall encourage. When we see people doing very well, we would encourage them, we would appreciate them, we would help them to do more, because we know ultimately these activities are for Krishna's pleasure. So the service is not meant for us, it's meant for Krishna. So if somebody is doing it very nicely, we should encourage him, we should appreciate him. So this is what is happening in the spiritual sky. But in the material world, because of the influence of the modes of nature, we tend to become envious, we tend to become jealous, and that brings a very unhealthy competition in the material world. So in book distribution, we can compete, but the competition should be healthy. If somebody is distributing 1,000 books a day, we should appreciate him. Now, Krishna has empowered him to do that. And we should say, you are so lucky, you are so fortunate that Krishna has empowered you to do such a great service. May Krishna also empower us to do like you. So that should be our mood. We shouldn't think, oh, this person is doing much better than us, so let us bring him down, let us vilify him, let us castigate against him, let us call him bad names. It means we are forgetting that the service is for Krishna. If we know the service is for Krishna, and somebody is empowered to do such nice service for the pleasure of Krishna and for the pleasure of Guru, then we should appreciate the person and encourage him to do more. It's like when Uddhava went to Vrindavan with the message of Krishna for the Brajavasis, and he saw that the Brajavasis were all in tears. They were crying. They were shedding streams of tears, wetting their clothes. Yashoda Mai, Nanda Maharaj, their whole ground was flowing with water. There were rivers of tears flowing everywhere. Uddhava was thinking, these devotees, they're in bhava, they are crying, they're in ecstasy. Look at the tears of love that they're shedding for Krishna. Should I tell them to stop, or should I tell them to continue? Uddhava was in a state of bewilderment. He was thinking, these devotees are experiencing the highest love. Look at the tears. There is a river of tears flowing in Vrindavan. Should I tell them to continue to cry because they're experiencing bhava of Krishna? Or should I tell them to stop? So obviously, they should continue to cry because they're experiencing bhava. So a devotee should always see the bigger picture. What is the cause of the service? What is the purpose of the service? For whom is the service being rendered? So if somebody is excelling in that service, we should understand that Krishna and Guru have empowered the soul, and our duty is to appreciate him. And by appreciating such a person, we will also become empowered to do a similar thing. But if we become envious, jealous, and start finding ways and means of bringing him down, we are actually interrupting with the service that is meant for Krishna's pleasure. So there should be healthy competition between devotees with the understanding that every service is actually meant for Krishna's pleasure. It is only this mindset that will help us to overcome the element of envy. Is that okay, Mataji?
Thank you so very much, Prabhuji. Very grateful. Thank you.
Okay, let me just look at a few verses, then we can go to the next chapter because we have is now what is the time? We have 1 hour 25 minutes, I guess. Or 1 hour 45. Let's see. We are supposed to end at 4 o'clock. Yeah.
We have 2 hours, 35 minutes more, Prabhuji.
Okay, 2 hours, 35 minutes more. Okay. So let us see. We have to cover another chapter before the day ends. So let me look at some verses that are selected before we go to the next chapter. We'll look at 16. We can look at I think 19. Nineteen says, many types of transcendental ecstasies manifest in the body of a devotee. When various ecstasies appear in the body of a devotee, it is to be understood that his devotional service has become perfect. There are many types of transcendental ecstasies in the forms of crying, laughing, perspiring, falling down, and crying like a madman. All these symptoms are sometimes visible on the body of a devotee. They are called Asta Satwika Vikara, which means 8 kinds of transcendental transformations. They are never to be imitated. But when a devotee actually becomes perfect, these symptoms are visible on his body. So, these are the symptoms of bhava. Just as there are symptoms when somebody is drunk, his behavior can easily be identified. Or when somebody is sick, his symptoms can easily be identified. Or when somebody is happy, his happiness can easily be identified. Or when somebody is unhappy, it will be expressed on his face. So similarly, when one becomes advanced in bhava, when somebody becomes deep in his spiritual realization, there are bound to be some symptoms that would indicate the level of consciousness of the person. Of course, these symptoms are not common. They are not expected to be found in every devotee. Nevertheless, those who are very advanced, they can be seen. For instance, the case of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. All these symptoms were manifest in his body, especially in his last 6 years in Puri. Every blessed day, Swarup Damodar, Govinda, and Ramananda Raya, they witnessed these symptoms in the body of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu on daily basis. He would cry, he would laugh, he would dance, he would go into coma, his body will elongate, his body will become shrunken. All of these things were present in the body of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Similarly, it is also described, some of these symptoms were found in the life of Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada would stand before the deities and tears were flowing down his cheeks. Sometimes Srila Prabhupada would chant the Jai Radha Madhava prayers during a class, and he would go into trance and just become silent. Sometimes devotees also chant the holy names of Krishna, and they would be carried away by the ecstasy of the holy name. All of these things are indications that a devotee is experiencing deep, deep joy within his heart. He's experiencing bhav within his heart. And this should let us understand that devotional service is real. Devotional service, it is practical. Devotional service is a science. And if we follow the process properly, at some stage in our lives, we should be able to experience some of these symptoms. So that is what I wanted to say, that these symptoms are there as signals, evidence that the process of bhakti is very powerful. And anyone who follows it religiously would at some point experience some of these symptoms or all of these symptoms. Once the heart is purified, once the mind is purified, these symptoms will begin to manifest one after the other in the body of a devotee. It is possible. In text 21, it says, Maharaj prayed to a great devotee and hero who conquered all undesirable elements. This is actually the responsibility of every devotee to conquer undesirable elements. Material life means associating with undesirable elements. That is what material existence means. And so when one takes to the process of bhakti, he is supposed to do away with undesirable elements. Therefore, it is mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Satyam Socham Daya Monam Buddhir Shri Hiri Yasha Shamaha Shamodama Bagasketi Yasangat Yati Shankshayam. To become devoid of truthfulness, of cleanliness, of mercy, of gravity, of spiritual intelligence, of shyness, of austerity, of forgiveness, of control of the mind, of control of the senses, means one is entertaining undesirable elements. And the opposite is one should cultivate truthfulness, cleanliness, mercy, gravity, spiritual intelligence, shyness, austerity, control of the senses, forgiveness, control of the mind. If one cultivates this, then one is driving out all undesirable elements. In other words, by the practice of Krishna consciousness, one drives away all bad qualities. One drives away all undesirable elements. By the association of devotees, by the practice of Krishna consciousness, one drives away all undesirable elements. So that is the power of bhakti. Bhakti is so powerful that even the most degraded person can become very exalted. Like Jagai and Madai. Jagai and Madai were feared in Navadvip. Nobody wanted to come close to them because they were very dangerous. They were surrounded by all kinds of undesirable elements. But when they received the mercy of Lord Nityananda and blessings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, all their undesirable elements were driven out of them, and they became first-class Vaishnavas. And people were no more afraid of them. So devotional service is so powerful that even the most degraded person can become the most exalted person. Just sometimes I say that the kind of life we're leading as students in the secular world. And when we came in touch with Krishna consciousness and how our lives have changed, the transformation that we've gone through is an evidence that devotional service is powerful enough to drive away all undesirable elements from our lives. In text 24, it says, glories of the Lord emanate from the mouths of pure devotees who speak from the core of their hearts. Maharaj Prithu wanted to have 1,000,000 ears to hear the glories of the lotus feet of the Lord. He specifically mentioned that the glories of the Lord should emanate from the mouths of the pure devotees who speak from the cores of their hearts. It is stated in the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, Shukam Mukat Amritam Drava Samyutam. The nectar of Srimad Bhagavatam became more relishable because it emanated from the mouth of Srila Shukadeva Goswami. One might think that these glories of the Lord can be heard from anywhere, from the mouths of either devotees or non-devotees. But here it is specifically mentioned that the glories of the Lord must emanate from the mouths of pure devotees. So the pure devotees, they carry the Supreme Personality of Godhead within the core of their hearts. That is a fact. The Lord himself stated categorically that he lives where the devotees are always glorifying his name. He is inclined to the devotees. Sadhavo hridayam mahim sadhunam hridaya tu aham. My pure devotees always live within the core of my heart, and I always live within the core of the hearts of my pure devotees. My devotees know nothing but me, and I also know no one except them. So in this way, there is such an intimate relationship between the Lord and his devotees. So therefore, because the devotee, the Lord is living in the heart of the devotee, is present in the heart of the devotee, when the pure devotees speak about the Lord, it carries a lot of potency. In fact, it is said, I think in the next verse or so, that the saffron dust from the lotus feet of the Lord, they are carried by the speech of the pure devotee. And those saffron dust, they enter into the ear of the audience and goes into the heart. And that saffron dust purify the heart of the conditioned soul. Similarly, Uddhava is telling Krishna in the 11th canto, Tava Vikriditam Krishna Nrinam Parama Mangalam Karna Piyusha Asadya Tyajanti Anyas Priham Janaha. That, my dear Krishna, your pastimes are supremely auspicious for mankind and are an intoxicating beverage for the ears. Tasting such pastimes, people forget their desires for other things. So this is why it is important to give oral reception to the words of the pure devotees, because Krishna is present in their hearts. Krishna is present in the heart of everyone as super soul. But many people are not aware that Krishna is present in the heart. But for a pure devotee, he can actually communicate with Krishna and within his heart. He hears Krishna talking in his heart. He sees Krishna within his heart. So that presence is different because there is a relationship, there is an interaction, there is an exchange between the pure devotees and the Lord within their hearts. So by hearing such devotees, one is actually coming in touch with Krishna. Hearing the description of Krishna from the mouths of the pure devotees, one is actually coming in touch with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We have looked at text 26, 27. Maybe we can look at 28. Yeah, I think we also look at 28. Madalakshmi getting angry. So let's see 29. 29 says, the highest perfection of life is to simply hear the glories of the Lord. Prithu Maharaj therefore concluded that liberated persons taken to the devotional path have acquired the ultimate goal of life. If liberation were the end in itself, there would be no question of a liberated person taken to devotional service. In other words, the transcendental bliss derived from self-realization, known as Atmananda, is very significant in the presence of the bliss derived from devotional service to the lotus feet of the Lord. Prithu Maharaj therefore concluded that he would simply hear of the glories of the Lord constantly and thus engage his mind upon the lotus feet of the Lord. That is the highest perfection of life. It is described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that there are 4 kinds of pleasure the living entity can experience. One is called Jadananda. Jadananda means material pleasure. The living entities within the material world, they take pleasure in rubbing the senses against the sense objects. And they get some pleasure out of it, temporary pleasure out of it, fleeting pleasure out of it. And that pleasure is called Jada Ananda, material pleasure. It is very flickering. One is happy this moment, and one becomes unhappy the next moment. One is excited this moment because he's got some good news, some good things. The next moment, things will turn, things will change. He will lose everything and becomes very miserable. So such pleasure is not lasting. But because the living entity is not aware of a higher sense of pleasure, a higher form of pleasure, he remains attached to this Jadananda, this flickering pleasure. When one takes to the process of Gyan, knowledge, pursuing spiritual life via the medium of knowledge, one comes to Brahmananda. Brahmananda is also some form of spiritual pleasure, but it's very, very minute. It is a pleasure that is derived from the impersonal realization of the Supreme Lord. But if one goes further to the practice of yoga, meditating on the super soul, one comes to the platform of Atmananda. Atmananda is the pleasure derived by yogis that meditate on the super soul, on the form of the Lord in the heart. But even superior to Atmananda is Premananda. Premananda is the divine love for the Supreme Personality of God, the original Supreme Personality of Godhead in the spiritual sky. And that is the highest realization, the highest joy, the highest pleasure the living entity can experience in the service of the Lord. So therefore, Premananda is considered the topmost pleasure for the living entity. So it is said, so Chiranivara Yase Syat Achyuta Katashraya Shrivanta Shradadhanasya Nitya Dasyat Adiyataha. O best of kings, one who is faithful, one who is always hearing the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one who is always engaged in the culture of Krishna consciousness and in hearing of the Lord's activities, very soon becomes eligible to experience the presence of the Lord face to face and enjoy transcendental bliss, Premananda, in the presence of the Lord. So devotional service is meant to bring us to the platform of Premananda. And the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra is the beginning of this Premananda. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he came into this world purposely to distribute this Premananda. Vande Sri Krishna Chaitanya Krishna Bhava Miritahi Yaha Aswadyan Swadhyayam Bhaktam Prema Dikshama Shikshayat. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his main business was to distribute Krishna Bhavamritam, the sweetness of Krishna's love, the sweetness of Krishna's activities, the sweetness of Krishna's name. That was the mission of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And so he profusely distributed the holy name of Krishna everywhere and to everyone. It says, Patra apatra nahi nahi stana stana. Patra apatra vichara nahi nahi stana stana. When Lord Chaitanya and his followers, his devotees, when they were distributing the holy names of Krishna, when they were distributing the love of Krishna, they did not consider who is qualified and who is not qualified. They did not consider where to distribute and where not to distribute. Anyone and everyone was qualified to receive the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So the highest perfection is to hear the glories of the Lord. And that is what Srila Prabhupada has given us by giving us this Srimad Bhagavatam, by giving us Srimad Bhagavad Gita, by giving us Srimad Chaitanya Charitamrita, that we can read and we can hear. And by such activities, we are becoming eligible to again associate with Supreme Personality of Godhead. In text 34, it says, the purpose of the Lord's taking breath is to establish devotional service, the perfection of religion. One must understand the transcendental breath of the Lord and the devotee. The purpose of the Lord's taking breath is to establish devotional service, which is the perfect system of religion. And the purpose of the birth of a devotee is to broadcast the same system of religion, or the Bhakti cult, all over the world. Prithu Maharaj was an incarnation of the power of the Lord to spread the Bhakti cult. And the Lord blessed him to remain fixed in his position. Thus, when the king refused to accept any material benediction, the Lord appreciated that refusal very much. So, Krishna himself declares in the Bhagavad Gita, Paritranaya sadunam vinasaya chaduskritam dharma samstapanataya sambhavami yuge yuge. He descends into this material world in every millennium just to reestablish the principles of religion. And why does he do that? So that he can give everyone the opportunity to perform devotional service. He said the avatar or incarnation of Godhead descends from the spiritual kingdom as an incarnation or avatar. And the mission of that is to establish religious principles, is to guide the living entity back home, back to Godhead. So when the Lord descends into this material world, his only business is to reestablish religious principles and attract the conditioned souls to the process of bhakti. And then in 38, it said developing the vision to see the Lord, developing spiritual eyes by the process of devotional service. Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena Sanda Sandaiva Hirda Yesu Vilokayanti Yamsha Mashindra Achintya Gunaswarupam Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. Unless one anoints his eyes with the salve of love, with the ointment of love, it is not possible to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra can be compared to anointing our eyes with the ointment of love. If the Maha Mantra is chanted so nicely, the dust accumulated for many, many lives will be eradicated. Charito Darpana Majanam. And when the dust, material dust, is removed from our hearts, removed from our mind, then it becomes easy to develop this premanjana. It becomes easy to anoint our eyes with the ointment of love. And Krishna can be seen. Krishna is very eager to give us darshan. He is very eager. The problem is with us. We are not eager to have the darshan of the Lord. So if we perform our sadhanas very nicely, we perform our japa very nicely, we give oral reception to the glories of the Lord very nicely, this premanjana will develop. The vision will develop. And it becomes possible to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So now we go to text chapter 21. Chapter 21. So as usual, I'll read the first verse, the slok, and the translation, which says, Maitreya Ovacha, Moktikai Kushma Sragbir, Dukalai Swarna Toranai, Mahasurabibir Durpai, Manditam Tatra Tatravai. Translation. The great sage Maitreya told Vidur, when the king entered his city, it was very beautifully decorated to receive him with pearls, flower, garlands, beautiful cloth, and golden gates. And the entire city was perfumed with highly fragrant incense. The slide says, Vedic civilization recommends uplands and decoration with natural gifts. Real uplands is supplied by natural gifts such as gold, silver, pearls, valuable stones, fresh flowers, trees, and silken cloth. Thus, the very civilization recommends uplands and decoration with these natural gifts of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such uplands immediately changes the condition of the mind, and the entire atmosphere becomes spiritualized. King Pritu's capital was decorated with such highly upland decorations. So we can continue with the reading from text 2, 3, and 4, actually. 2, 3, and 4.
Pregnant water distilled from sandalwood and agru herb was sprinkled everywhere on the lanes, roads, and small parks throughout the city, and everywhere were decorations of unbroken fruits, flowers, wetted grains, were varied minerals and lamps, and all presented as auspicious paraphernalia. At the street crossing, there were bunches of fruits and flowers, as well as pillar of banana trees and betel nut branches. All these combined decoration everywhere looked very attractive. As a king entered the gate of the city, all the citizens received him with many auspicious articles like lamps, flowers, and yogurt. The king was also received by many beautiful unmarried girls whose bodies were bedecked with various ornaments, especially with earrings which collided with one another. A welcome offered by unmarried girls who are internally and externally clean and dressed in nice garments and ornaments is also auspicious. Offering of natural products such as betel nuts, bananas, newly grown wheat, paddy, yogurt, and vermilion carried by the citizen and scattered throughout the city are all auspicious paraphernalia according to Vedic civilization for receiving a prominent guest like a bridegroom, king, or spiritual master. Similarly, a welcome offered by unmarried girls who are internally and externally clean and are dressed in a nice garments and ornaments is also auspicious. Kumari or unmarried girls untouched by the hands of any member of the opposite sex are auspicious member of society. Even today in Hindu society, the most conservative families do not allow unmarried girls to mix freely with boys. They are very carefully protected by their parents. After marriage, they are protected by their husbands, and when elderly, are protected by their elder children. When thus protected, women as a class remain an auspicious source of energy to men. 4:21:44.
Thank you. Text 5.
When the king entered the palace, conch shells and kettle drums were sounded. Priests chanted Vedic mantras, and professional reciters offered different prayers. But in spite of all this ceremony to welcome him, the king was not the least bit affected. Great personalities of power and opulence never become proud. The reception given to the king was full of opulence, yet he did not become proud. It is said, therefore, that great personalities of power and opulence never become proud, and the example is given that a tree which is full of fruits and flowers does not stand erect in pride, but instead bends downwards to show submissiveness. This is a sign of the wonderful character of great personalities. 4.21.5.
6.
Both the important citizens and the common citizens welcomed the king very heartily, and he also bestowed upon them their desired blessings. A responsible monarchy is better than a so-called democratic government in which no one is responsible. A responsible king was always approachable by his citizens. Generally, the citizens, great and common, all had an aspirations to see the king and take benedictions from him. The king knew this, and therefore, whenever he met the citizens, he immediately fulfilled their desires or mitigated their grievances. In such dealings, A responsible monarchy is better than a so-called democratic government in which no one is responsible to mitigate the grievances of the citizens, who are unable to personally meet the supreme executive head. In a responsible monarchy, the citizens had no grievances against the government, and even if they did, they could approach the king directly for immediate satisfaction. 421.6.
7.
King Prithu was greater than the greatest soul and was therefore worshipable by everyone. He performed many glorious activities in ruling over the surface of the world and was always magnanimous. After achieving such great success and a reputation which spread throughout the universe, he at last obtained the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The most important duty of a monarch or a government is to perform various sacrifices enjoined in scriptures. A responsible king or chief executive has many responsible duties to attend to in ruling over the citizens. The most important duty of the monarch or the government is to perform various sacrifices as enjoined in the Vedic literatures. The next duty of the king is to see that every citizen executes the prescribed duties for his particular community. It is the king's duty to see that everyone perfectly executes the duties prescribed for the Varna and Ashrama divisions of society. Besides that, as exemplified by King Prithu, he must develop the earth for the greatest possible production of food grains.
Thank you.
Text 8.
8 and 9. 8 and
Yes.
9.
Sut Goswami continued, O Shaunaka, leader of the great sages, after hearing Maitreya speak about the various activities of King Prithu, the original king who was fully qualified, glorified, and widely praised all over the world, Vidura, the great devotee, very submissively worshipped Maitreya Rishi and asked him the following question. Text 9. Vidura said, My dear Brahmana Maitreya, it is very enlightening to understand that King Prithu was enthroned by the great sages and Brahmins. All the demigods presented him with innumerable gifts, and he also expanded his influence upon personally receiving strength from Lord Vishnu. Thus, he greatly developed the earth. Because Maharaj Prithu was blessed by the Brahmanas and saintly persons, he ruled over the earth and exploited its resources for the benefit of all. Because Prithu Maharaj was an empowered incarnation of Lord Vishnu and was naturally a great Vaishnava, devotee of the Lord, all the demigods were pleased with him and presented different gifts to help him in exercising his royal power. And the great sages and saintly persons also joined in his coronation. Thus, blessed by them, he ruled over the earth and exploited its resources for the greater satisfaction of the people in general, regardless of whether the chief executive is a king or president, or whether the government is monarchical or democratic. This process is so perfect that if it is followed, everyone will become happy, and thus it will be very easy for all to execute devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. 4.21.9.
Thank you. 10.
Prithu Maharaj was so great in his activities and magnanimous in his method of ruling that all the kings and demigods on the various planets still follow in his footsteps. Who is there who will not try to hear about his glorious activities? I wish to hear more and more about Prithu Maharaj because his activities are so pious and auspicious. Hearing about the activities of Prithu Maharaj enable kings and executive heads to rule their kingdom. Saint Vidura's purpose in hearing about Prithu Maharaj over and over again was to set an example for ordinary kings and executive heads, who should all be inclined to hear repeatedly about Prithu Maharaj's activities in order to also be able to rule over the kingdoms or states very faithfully for the peace and prosperity of the people in general. Unfortunately, at the present moment, no one cares to hear about Prithu Maharaj or to follow in his footsteps. Therefore, no nation in the world is either happy or progressive in spiritual understanding, although that is the sole aim and objective of human life.
Thank you. 11.
The great saintly sage Maitreya told Vidura, "My dear Vidura, King Prithu lived in a tract of land between the two great rivers, Ganges and Yamuna. Because he was very opulent, he appeared that he was enjoying his destined fortune in order to diminish the results of his past pious activities. A devotee is not subject to the reactions resulting from past deeds. Prithu Maharaj was not only a Shaktiavesh avatar, but also a great devotee. A devotee is not subjected to the reaction resulting from past deeds. In Brahm Samhita, it is said, Karmani nibhanti kintu cha bhakti bhajam. For devotees, the result of past pious and impious activities are nullified by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The words Ara, Arab, Dhan even mean as if achieved by past deeds. But in case of Prithu Maharaj, there was no portion of reaction to past deeds. And thus the word Eva is used here to indicate comparison to ordinary person. 11.4.
Thank you. 12.
Maharaj Prithu was an unrivaled king and possessed the scepter for ruling all the 7 islands on the surface of the globe. No one could disobey his irrevocable orders but the saintly persons, the Brahmins, and the descendants of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Vaishnavas. When a living entity falls down to the material world, he forgets his relationship with Achyuta and becomes Achyuta fallen. Achyuta refers to one who does not fall because he is never influenced by the modes of material nature. When a living entity falls down to the material world from his original position, he becomes Achyuta, which means that he forgets his relationship with Achyuta. Actually, every living entity is a part and parcel or a son of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When influenced by the modes of material nature, a living entity forgets this relationship and thinks in terms of different species of life. But when he again comes to his original consciousness, he does not observe such bodily designations. 4.21.12.
Thank you. 13.
Once upon a time, King Prithu initiated the performance of a very great sacrifice in which great saintly sages, Brahmanas, demigods from higher planetary systems, and great saintly king known as Rajrishis all assembled together. Interplanetary communication and travel via suitable airplanes and space vehicles. In this work, the most significant point is that although King Prithu's residential quarters were in India, between the river Ganges and Yamuna, the demigods also participated in the great sacrifice he performed. This indicates that formerly the demigod used to come to this planet. Similarly, great personalities like Arjuna, Yudhishthir, and many others used to visit higher planetary systems. Thus, there was interplanetary communication via suitable airplanes and space vehicles.
Thank you. 14.
In that great assembly, Maharaj Prithu first of all worshipped all the respectable visitors according to their respective positions. After this, he stood up in the midst of the assembly, and it appeared that the full moon had arisen amongst the stars. Maharaj Prithu arranges for proper reception of demigods, sages, brahmanas, and great kings. According to the Vedic system, the reception of great exalted personalities as arranged by Prithu Maharaj in that great sacrificial arena is very important. The first procedure in receiving guests is to wash their feet, and it is learned from Vedic literature that one time when Maharaj Yudhishthira performed a Rajasuya Yagya, Krishna took charge of washing the feet of the visitors. Similarly, Maharaj Prithu also arranged for the proper reception of the demigods, the saintly sages, the brahmanas, and the great kings.
Thank you.
Text
15.
15.
Yeah.
King Prithu's body was tall and sturdy, and his complexion was fair. His arms were full and broad, and his eyes as bright as the rising sun. His nose was straight, his face very beautiful, and his personality grave. His teeth were set beautifully in his smiling face. Bodily features are exhibited in accordance with one's past deeds. The face is in the index of the mind. One's mental constitution is exhibited by his facial features. The bodily features of a particular person are exhibited in accordance with his past deeds. For according to one's past deeds, his next bodily features, whether in human society, animal society, or demigod society, are determined. This is proof of the transmigration of the soul through different types of bodies. 4.21.15.
Thank you. So this one 16 to 20. 16 all the way to 20.
The chest of Maharaj Prithu was very broad. His waist was very thick. His abdomen, wrinkled by lines of the skin, resembled in construction of a leaf of a banyan tree. His navel was coiled and deep. His thighs were of a golden hue, and his instep was arched. The black, slick hair on his head was very fine and curly, and his neck, like a conch shell, was decorated with auspicious lines. He wore a very valuable dhoti, and there was a nice wrapper on the upper part of his body. As Maharaj Prithu was being initiated to perform the sacrifice, he had to leave aside his valuable dress, and therefore his natural body beauty was visible. It was very pleasing to see him put on a black deer skin and wear a ring of kushagras on his finger. For this increased the natural beauty of his body. It appears that Maharaj Prithu observed all the regulative principles before he performed the sacrifice. Just to encourage the member of the assembly and to enhance their pleasure, King Prithu glanced over them with eyes that seemed like stars in a sky wet with dew. He then spoke to them in a great voice. Maharaj Prithu's speech was very beautiful, full of metaphorical language, clearly understandable, and very pleasing to hear. His words were all grave and certain. It appears that when he spoke, he expressed his personal realization of the absolute truth in order to benefit all who were present. Prithu Maharaj's speech was composed in highly metaphorical ornamental language. Maharaj Prithu was beautiful in his external bodily features, and his speech was also very glorious in all respects. His words, which were nicely composed in highly metaphorical ornamental language, were pleasing to hear and were not only mellow but also very clearly understandable and without doubt or ambiguity.
Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you. Yeah,
Prabhuji, can I ask question or later?
Nathan, hold on. Just note down the question on the slide.
Okay.
We'll come back to it. Yes. 21.
King Prithu said, O gentle members of the assembly, may all good fortune be upon you. May all of you great souls who have come to attend this meeting kindly hear my prayer attentively. A person who is actually inquisitive must present his decision before an assembly of noble souls. Prithu Maharaj did not present himself as a royal authority meant to command everyone. Prithu Maharaj, however, was considered with persons who were gentle, and therefore he first addressed all the honest persons, not caring for the envious. He did not, however, present himself as a royal authority empowered to command everyone, for he wanted to present his statement in humble submission before the assembly of great sages and saintly persons. As a great king of the entire world, he could have given them orders, but he was so humble, meek, and honest that he presented his statement for approval in order to clarify his mature decision. Everyone within this material world is conditioned by the modes of material nature and therefore has four defects. But although Prithu Maharaj was above all these, still like an ordinary conditioned soul, he presented his statements to the great soul sages and saintly persons present there. 21 forward.
Thank you. 22.
King Prithu continued, by the grace of the Supreme Lord, I have been appointed the king of this planet, and I carry the scepter to rule the citizens, protect them from all danger, and give them employment according to their respective positions in the social order established by Vedic injunction. According Vedic system, the king is considered a representative of Godhead and is offered respects by the citizens. On every planet, there is a predominating person. Just as we now see that in every country there is a president, if one is president or king, it should be understood that this opportunity has been given to him by the Supreme Lord. According to the Vedic system, the king is considered a representative of Godhead and is offered respects by the citizens as God in the human form of life. Actually, according to Vedic information, the Supreme Lord maintains all living entities and especially human beings to elevate them to the highest perfection. After many, many births in lower species, when a living entity evolves to the human form of life, and in particular to the civilized human form of life, his society must be divided into four gradations as ordered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead in Bhagavad Gita 4.21.22.
Thank you. 23.
Maharaj Prithu said, I think that upon the execution of my duties as king, I shall be able to achieve the desirable objectives described by experts in Vedic knowledge. This destination is certainly achievable by the pleasure of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the seer of all destiny. Evidence from the Vedic literature should be accepted as final authority. Maharaj Prithu gives special stress to the word Brahma Vadina by the experts in the Vedic knowledge. Brahm refers to the Vedas, which are also known as Shabd Brahm or transcendental sound. Transcendental sound is not ordinary language, although it appears to be written in ordinary language. Evidence from the Vedic literature should be accepted as final authority. In the Vedic literature, there is much information, and of course, there is information about the execution of a king's duty. A responsible king who executes his appointed duty by giving proper protection to all living entities on this planet is promoted to the heavenly planetary system.
24.
Any king who does not teach his citizens about their respective duties in terms of Varna and Ashrama, but who simply exacts tolls and taxes from them is liable to suffer for the impious activities which have been performed by the citizens. In addition to such degradation, the king also loses his own fortune. The laws of nature are very subtle. A king, governor, or president should not take the opportunity to occupy his post without also discharging his duty. He must teach the people within the state how to observe the divisions of Varna and Ashrama. If a king neglects to such instructions and is simply satisfied with levying taxes, and then those who share in the collection, namely all the government servants and the head of the state, are liable to share in the impious activities of the general masses. The laws of nature are very subtle. For example, if one eats in a place which is very sinful, he shares in the resultant reaction of the sinful activities performed there. It is a Vedic system for a householder to invite Brahmanas and Vaishnavas to eat at ceremonial performances in his house, because the Brahmanas and Vaishnavas can immunize him from sinful activities. But it is not the duty of rigid Brahmanas and Vaishnavas to accept invitation everywhere.
Yeah, 25.
Prithu Maharaj continued, therefore, my dear citizens, for the welfare of your king after his death, you should execute your duties properly in terms of your positions of Varna and Ashrama, and should always think of the Supreme Personality of Godhead within your hearts. By doing so, you will protect your own interests and you will bestow mercy upon your king for his welfare after death. Without Krishna consciousness, neither the state nor the citizens of the state can be responsible. A responsible government must teach Krishna consciousness very vigorously for the benefit of all. Without Krishna consciousness, neither the state nor the citizens of the state can be responsible. Prithu Maharaj therefore specifically requested the citizens to act in Krishna consciousness, and he was also very anxious to teach them how to become Krishna conscious. 4.21.25.
Thank you. 26.
I request all the pure-hearted demigods, forefathers, and saintly persons to support my proposal. For after death, the result of an action is equally shared by its doer, its director, and its supporter. Government should be
Right. Yeah.
conducted in such a way that everyone can be elevated to Krishna consciousness. The government of Prithu Maharaj was perfect because it was administered exactly according to the orders of the Vedic injunctions. Prithu Maharaj has already explained that the chief duty of the government is to see that everyone executes his respective duty and is elevated to the platform of Krishna consciousness. The government should be so conducted that automatically one is elevated to Krishna consciousness. King Prithu therefore wanted a citizen to cooperate fully with him, for if they assented, they would enjoy the same profit as he after death. Similarly, the Krishna conscious movement going on at present moment is genuine, perfect, and authorized and is followed in the footsteps of Prithu Maharaj. Anyone who cooperates with this movement or accepting its principle will get the same result as the workers who are actively propagating Krishna consciousness.
Thank you. 27.
My dear respectable ladies and gentlemen, according to the authoritative statements of Shastra, there must be a supreme authority who is liable to award the respective benefits of our present activities. Otherwise, why should there be persons who are unusually beautiful and powerful both in this life or in the life after death? Although so-called Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras have lost their culture, they claim it by birthright. The rules and regulations set up by the execution of the duties of Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras, or Brahmacharis, Grihasthas, Vanaprasthas, and Sannyasis are meant to satisfy the Supreme Lord. At the present moment, although the so-called Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras have lost their original culture, they claim to be Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras by birthright. Yet they have rejected the proposition that such social and spiritual orders are specially meant for worship of Lord Vishnu.
Text 20.
28.
It is
29.
confirmed not only by the evidence of the Vedas, but also by the personal behavior of great personalities like Manu, Uttanpad, Dhruv, Priyavrat, and my grandfather Anga, as well as by many other great personalities and ordinary living entities, exemplified by the Maharaj Prahlad and Bali, all of whom are theists, believing in the existence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead who carries a club. The best way to mold one's life is to follow in the footsteps of the authorized personalities. Narottama Das Thakur states that one has to ascertain the right path for his activities by following in the footsteps of great saintly persons and books of knowledge under the guidance of a spiritual master. Sadhu Shastra Guru Vakya. A saintly person is one who follows the Vedic injunctions, which are the orders of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The word Guru refers to one who gives proper direction under the authority of the Vedic injunctions and according to the examples of the lives of great personalities. The best way to mold one's life is to follow in the footsteps of the authorized personalities like those mentioned herein by Prithu Maharaj, beginning with Swambhuva Manu, 4.21.28 and 29.
Thank you. Text 30.
Although abominable persons like my father, Vena, the grandson of death personified, are bewildered on the path of religion, all the great personalities like those mentioned agree that in this world, the only bestower of the benedictions of religion, economic development, sense gratification, liberation, or elevation to the heavenly planets is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Prithu Maharaj considered King Vena's character abominable because he was foolish regarding the execution of religious performances. King Vena, the father of Prithu Maharaj, was condemned by the Brahmanas and saintly person because of his denying the existence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and rejecting the method of satisfying him by performance of Vedic sacrifice. In other words, he was an atheist who did not believe in the existence of God and who consequently stopped all Vedic ritualistic ceremonies in his kingdom. Prithu Maharaj considered King Vena's character abominable because Vena was foolish regarding the execution of religious performances. Atheists are of the opinion that there is no need to accept the authority of the Supreme Personality of Godhead to be successful in religion, economic development, sense gratification, or liberation.
Thank you. 31.
By the inclination to serve the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, suffering humanity can immediately cleanse the dirt which has accumulated in their minds during innumerable births. Like the Ganges water which emanates from the toes of the lotus feet of the Lord, such a process immediately cleanses the mind and thus spiritual or Krishna consciousness gradually increases. The Ganges is glorified because it emanates from the toes of the lotus feet of the Lord. The glories of Ganges water are known to Indians and to ourselves also. The river Ganges flows by Calcutta. Sometimes within the water, there are many stools and other dirty things which are washed away from neighboring mills and factories, but still thousands of men take baths in the Ganges water and they are very healthy as well as spiritually inclined. This is the effect of Ganges water. The Ganges is glorified because it emanates from the toes of the lotus feet of the Lord. Similarly, if one takes to the service of the lotus feet of the Lord or takes to Krishna consciousness, he is immediately cleansed of many dirty things which have accumulated in his innumerable births.
Amazing.
Text
32.
32. When a devotee takes shelter at the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is completely cleansed of all misunderstanding or mental speculation, and he manifests renunciation. This is possible only when one is strengthened by practicing Bhakti Yoga. One having taken shelter at the root of the lotus feet of the Lord, a devotee never comes back to this material existence, which is full of the threefold miseries. Our false appetite for enjoyment and lordship of the material world is due to a prominence of passion and ignorance. By practicing Bhakti Yoga, one can directly perceive his advancement in spiritual life. In other practices like Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Dhyana Yoga, one may not be confident about his progress, but in Bhakti Yoga, one can become directly aware of his progress in spiritual life, just as a person who eats can understand that his hunger is satisfied. Our false appetite for enjoyment and lordship of the material world is due to a prominence of passion and ignorance. By Bhakti Yoga, these two qualities are diminished, and one becomes situated in the mode of goodness, gradually surpassing the mode of goodness. One is situated in pure goodness, which is not contaminated by the material qualities. When thus situated, a devotee no longer has any doubts. He knows that he will not come back to this material world.
Hare Krishna. Text 33.
Prithu Maharaj advised his citizens, engaging your minds, your words, your bodies and the results of your occupational duties, and being always open-minded, you should all render devotional service to the Lord. According to your abilities and the occupations in which you are situated, you should engage your service at the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead with full confidence and without reservation. Then you will surely be successful in achieving the final objective in your lives. To be situated in a lower status of life is no disqualification for success in devotional service. Anyone can become successful in devotional service provided he displays no duplicity. It is explained here that one must be very frank and open-minded. Amayina. To be situated in a lower status of life is not a disqualification for success in devotional service. The only qualification is that whether one is a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra, he must be open, frank, and free from reservations. Then, by performing his particular occupational duty under the guidance of a proper spiritual master, he can achieve the highest success in life. As confirmed by the Lord himself, Striyo Vaishyastha Shudra Te Api Yanti Param Gati. Bhagavad Gita 9:32. It does not matter what one is, whether a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, or a degraded woman.
33, 34.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead is transcendental and not contaminated by this material world, but although he is concentrated spirit soul without material variety, for the benefit of the conditioned soul, he nevertheless accepts different types of sacrifice performed with various material elements, rituals, and mantras, and offered to the demigods under different names according to the interest and purpose of the performers. A tinge of bhakti purifies the material nature of performance. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments that these karma kanda ritualistic ceremonies, although contaminated, contain touches of devotional service. Because whenever there is a performance of any yajna, Lord Vishnu is given a central position. This is very important because even a little endeavor to please Lord Vishnu is bhakti and is of great value. A tinge of bhakti purifies the material nature of the performances, which by devotional service gradually come to the transcendental position. Therefore, although such yajnas are superficially material activities, the results are transcendental. Such yajnas as Surya Yajna, Indra Yajna, Chandra Yajna are performed in the name of the demigods, but these demigods are bodily parts of the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Thank you.
Text 35. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is all pervading, but he is also manifested in different types of bodies which arise from a combination of material nature, time, desires, and occupational duties. Thus, different types of consciousness develop, just as fire, which always basically the same, blazes in different ways according to the shape and dimension of firewood. Individual soul has awareness in accord with his material body attained by virtue of Prakriti. The Supreme Personality of Godhead constantly lives with the individual soul as Paramatma. The individual soul has awareness in accord with his material body, which he attains by virtue of Prakriti or material nature. The material ingredients are activated by the force of time, and thus the three material modes of nature are manifested. According to his association with the three modes of nature, the living entity develops a particular type of body. In animal life, the material mode of ignorance is so prominent that there is very little chance of realizing the Paramatma who is also present within the heart of the animal. But in the human form of life, because of developed consciousness, Chetanam, one can be transferred from ignorance and passion to goodness by the result of his activities, Kriya Phalattvena.
Verse 6.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the master and enjoyer of the results of all sacrifices, and he is the Supreme Spiritual Master as well. All of you citizens on the surface of the globe who have a relationship with me and are worshipping him by dint of your occupational duties are bestowing your mercy upon me. Therefore, O my citizens, I thank you. The Lord manifests himself as spiritual master both internally and externally to help the conditioned soul. The Supreme Godhead in his Paramatma feature is present in everyone's heart, and is always trying to induce the individual soul to surrender unto him and to engage in devotional service. Therefore, he is the original spiritual master. He manifests himself as spiritual master both internally and externally to help the conditioned soul both ways. Therefore, he has been mentioned herein as Guru. It appears, however, that in the time of Maharaj Prithu, all the people on the surface of the globe were his subjects. Most of them, in fact, almost all of them, were engaged in devotional service.
That is 7.
The Brahmanas and Vaishnavas are personally glorified by their characteristic powers of tolerance, penance, knowledge, and education. By the dint of all these spiritual assets, Vaishnavas are more powerful than royalty. It is therefore advised that the princely order not exhibited its material prowess before these two communities and should avoid offending them. When a Brahmana rises to the platform of a personal understanding of a supreme, he becomes a Vaishnava. When a person understands his pure identity, Brahm Janati, he immediately becomes a Brahmana. In the Brahmana stage, one's understanding of the absolute truth is mainly based on the impersonal view. When a Brahmana, however, rises to the platform of a personal understanding of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he becomes a Vaishnava. A Vaishnava is transcendental even to a Brahmana. In the material conception, the position of Brahmana is the highest in the human society. But a Vaishnava is transcendental even to a Brahman.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. 38.
Supreme Personality of Godhead, the ancient eternal Godhead who is foremost amongst all great personalities, obtained the opulence of his staunch reputation, which purifies the entire universe by worshipping the lotus feet of those Brahmanas and Vaishnavas. Although the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, offered respects to Yudhishthira and Kunti, since he is perpetually supremely perfect, he does not need to obtain anything. But still, it is said that he obtained his opulences by worshipping the lotus feet of the Brahmanas. These are his exemplary actions. When Lord Sri Krishna was in Dwarika, he offered his respects by bowing down at the lotus feet of Narada. When Sudama Vipra came to his house, Lord Krishna personally washed his feet and gave him a seat on his personal bed. Although he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna offered his respects to Maharaj Yudhishthira and Kunti. The Lord's exemplary behavior is to teach us.
Thank you. 39.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is everlastingly independent and who exists in everyone's heart, is very pleased with those who follow in his footsteps and engage without reservation in the service of the descendants of Brahmanas and Vaishnavas. For he is always dear to the Brahmanas and Vaishnavas, and they are always dear to him. Unless one serves the Vaishnavas and Brahmanas, one cannot get liberation from the material clutches. It is said that the Lord is most pleased when he sees one engage in the service of his devotee. He does not need any service from anyone because he is complete. But it is in our own interest to offer all kinds of services to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. These services can be offered to the Supreme Person not directly but through the service of Brahmanas and Vaishnavas. Srila Narottam Das Thakur saying, Chadiya Vaishnav Seva Nishtar Pai Chekeba, which means that unless one serves the Vaishnavas and Brahmanas, one cannot get liberation from the material clutches.
Thank you. 40.
By regular service to the Brahmanas and Vaishnavas, one can clear the dirt from his heart and thus enjoy supreme peace and liberation from material attachment and be satisfied. In this world, there is no fruitive activity superior to serving Brahman class. For this can bring pleasure to the demigods, from whom the many sacrifices are recommended. He was a maid servant's son, but by serving exalted Brahmanas and Vaishnavas, he became liberated. The word anativlam, without delay, is very significant because simply by serving Brahmanas and Vaishnavas, one can get liberation. There is no need to undergo severe penances and austerities. The vivid example of this is Narad Muni himself. In his previous birth, he was simply a maid servant's son, but he got the opportunity to serve exalted Brahmanas and Vaishnavas, and thus in his next life, He not only became liberated, but became famous as supreme spiritual master of the entire Vaishnav disciplic succession.
Thank you. 41.
Although the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Ananta, eats through the fire sacrifices offered in the names of the different demigods, he does not take as much pleasure in eating through fire as he does in accepting offerings through the mouths of learned sages and devotees, for then he does not leave the association of devotees. Instead of offering fire sacrifices, one should offer foodstuff to Brahmanas and Vaishnavas. Fire is certainly devoid of life, but devotees and Brahmanas are the living representatives of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, to feed Brahmanas and Vaishnavas is to feed the Supreme Personality of Godhead directly. It may be concluded that instead of offering fire sacrifices, one should offer foodstuff to Brahmanas and Vaishnavas, for that process is more effective than fire yagya. The vivid example of this principle in action was given by Advaita Prabhu. When he performed the Shraddha ceremony for his father, he first of all called Haridas Thakur and offered him food. It is the practice that after finishing the Shraddha ceremony, one should offer food to an elevated Brahman. But Advaita Prabhu offered food first to Haridas Thakur, who had taken his birth in a Mohammedan family.
42.
In Brahmanical culture, a Brahmana's transcendental position is eternally maintained because the injunctions of the Vedas are accepted with faith, austerity, scriptural conclusions, full sense and mind control, and meditation. In this way, the real goal of life is illuminated, just as one's faith is fully reflected in a clear mirror. Perfect Vaishnava is in a transcendental position because he speaks according to the tune of Krishna. Therefore, a devotee of Lord Krishna is actually a perfect Brahmana. His situation is transcendental, for he is free from the four defects of conditional life, which are the tendencies to commit mistakes, to be illusion, to cheat, and to possess imperfect senses. A perfect Vaishnava or Krishna conscious person is always in this transcendental position because he speaks according to Krishna and his representative. Because Vaishnavas speak exactly according to the tune of Krishna, whatever they say is free from these four defects. For example, Krishna said in Bhagavad Gita that everyone should always think of him. Everyone should become his devotee, offer him obeisances, and worship him. And ultimately, everyone should surrender unto him. These devotional activities are transcendental and free from mistakes, illusion, cheating, and imperfection.
43. 43.
O respectable personalities present here, I beg the blessings of all of you that I may perpetually carry on my crown the dust of the lotus feet of such Brahmanas and Vaishnavas until the end of my life. He who can carry such dust on his head is very soon relieved of all the reactions which arise from the sinful life, and eventually he develops all good and desirable qualities. A crown of a king is simply a big load if a king does not bear the dust of the lotus feet of Brahmanas and Vaishnavas. A great soul who has fully surrendered to the Supreme Lord after understanding him fully and after repeatedly undergoing austerities and penances for many, many lives is very rare. The crown of a king is simply a big load if the king or head of the state does not actually wear the dust of the lotus feet of Brahmanas and Vaishnavas. In other words, if a liberal king like Prithu Maharaj does not follow the instruction of Brahmanas and Vaishnavas or does not follow the Brahminical culture, he is simply a burden on a state, for he cannot benefit the citizens. Maharaj Prithu is the perfect example of an ideal chief executive.
Thank you.
Text
44.
44. Whoever acquires the Brahmanical qualification, whose only wealth is good behavior, who is grateful and who takes shelter of experienced persons, get all the opulence of the world. I therefore wish that the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his associates be pleased with the Brahman class, with the cows, and with me. Gratitude for the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is one of the qualities of Brahmanas and Vaishnavas. A devotee acquires all the good qualities of the demigods. He is Gunayanam, the reservoir of all good qualities. His only asset is good behavior, and he is grateful. Gratitude for the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is one of the qualities of Brahmanas and Vaishnavas. Everyone should feel grateful to the Supreme Personality of Godhead because he is maintaining all living entities and supplying all their necessities. As stated in the Vedas, Eko Bahunam Yog Vidyadhati Kama. The Supreme One is supplying all necessities to the living entities. The living entity who is therefore grateful to the Supreme of God is certainly qualified with good characteristics.
Thank you. 45.
The great sage Maitreya said, after hearing King Prithu speak so nicely, all the demigods, the denizens of Pritalok, the Brahmanas and the saintly person present at the meeting congratulated him by expressing their goodwill. All the saintly persons, pitas, and demigods present express their goodwill with words sadhu, sadhu. When a person speaks very nicely at a meeting, he is congratulated by the audience who express their goodwill with the word sadhu, sadhu. This is called sadhuvad. All the saintly persons, pitas, denizens of Pitriloka, and demigods who were present at the meeting and heard Prithu Maharaj express their goodwill with the words sadhu, sadhu. They all accepted the good mission of Prithu Maharaj and they were fully satisfied.
Hare Krishna. 46.
They all declared that the Vedic conclusion that one can conquer the heavenly planets by the action of a putra or son was fulfilled, for the most sinful Vena, who had been killed by the curse of Brahmanas, was now delivered from the darkest region of hellish life by his son Maharaj Prithu. The purpose of accepting a wife in religious marriage is to have a son qualified to deliver the family from hellish life. The purpose of marriage, therefore, is to have a putra or a son who is able to deliver his father, even if the father falls down to the hellish condition of put. Maharaj Prithu's father Vena was a most sinful person and was therefore cursed to death by the Brahmanas. Now all the great saintly persons, sages and Brahmanas present in the meeting, after hearing from Maharaj Prithu about his great mission in life, became convinced that the statement of the Vedas had been fully proved. The purpose of accepting a wife in religious marriage, as mentioned in the Vedas, is to have a putra, a son qualified to deliver his father from the darkest region of hellish life.
Thank you. 47.
Similarly, Hiranyakashipu, who by dint of his sinful activities always defied the supremacy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, entered into the darkest region of hellish life. But by the grace of his great son, Prahlad Maharaj, he also was delivered and went back home, back to Godhead. The rendering of service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead in expectation of reward is deprecated by Prahlad Maharaj as mercantile business. When Prahlad Maharaj was offered benediction by Narsimhadev, due to his great devotion and tolerance, he refused to accept any benediction from the Lord, thinking that such acceptance was not befitting a sincere devotee. The rendering of service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead in expectation of a good reward is deprecated by Prahlad Maharaj as mercantile business. Because Prahlad Maharaj was a Vaishnav, he did not ask a benediction for his personal self, but was very affectionate toward his father, although his father tortured him and would have killed him had he himself not been killed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Prahlad Maharaj begged pardon for him from the Lord. This favor was immediately granted by the Lord, and Hiranyakashipu was delivered from the darkest region of hellish life.
Thank you. 48.
All the saintly Brahmanas thus addressed Prithu Maharaj, O best of the warriors, O father of this globe, may you be blessed with a long life. for you have great devotion to the infallible Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the master of all the universe. Although one's duration of life is limited, if by chance one becomes a devotee, he surpasses that duration. Prithu Maharaj was blessed by the saintly person present at the meeting to have a long life because of his unflinching faith and his devotion to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although one's duration of life is limited in years, if by chance one becomes a devotee, he surpasses the duration prescribed for his life. Indeed, sometimes yogi dies according to their wish, not according to the laws of material nature. Another feature of devotee is that he lives forever because of his infallible devotion to the Lord. It is said, Kirtir yasya sa jivati. One who leaves a good reputation behind him lives forever. Specifically, one who is reputed as a devotee of the Lord undoubtedly lives forever.
Thank you. 49.
The audience continued. Dear King Prithu, your reputation is the purest of all, for you are preaching the glories of the most glorified of all, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Lord of the Brahmanas. Since, due to our great fortune, we have you as our master, we think that we are living directly under the agency of the Lord. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the maintainer and the leader of all living entities. The citizens declared that through being under the protection of Maharaj Prithu, they were directly under the protection of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This understanding is the proper situation of social steadiness within this material world. Since it is stated in the Vedas that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the maintainer and the leader of all living entities, the king or the executive head of the government must be a representative of the Supreme Person. Then he can claim honor exactly like the lords. How a king or leader of a society can become a representative of a Supreme Personality of Godhead is also indicated in this verse by the statement that because Maharaj Prithu was preaching the supremacy and the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu. He was therefore a proper representative of the Lord.
Thank you. Text 50.
Ah, dear Lord, it is your occupational duty to rule over your citizens. That is not a very wonderful task for a personality like you, who are so affectionate in seeing to the interests of the citizens because you are full of mercy. That is the greatness of your character. Since the Vedic Brahmins should live by spreading knowledge and should take contributions from the disciples. Since the Vedic society is divided into 4 classes of men, the Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras. Their means of livelihood are also mentioned in the scriptures. The Brahmins should live by spreading knowledge and should therefore take contributions from their disciples, whereas king should give protection to the citizens for their development to the highest standard of life, and he can therefore levy taxes from them. Businessmen or mercantile men, because they produce foodstuffs for the whole of society, can take a little profit from this. Whereas the Shudras, who cannot work as either Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, or Vaishyas, should give service to the higher classes of society and be provided by them with the supply of the necessities of life.
51.
The citizens continued. Today, you have opened our eyes and revealed how to cross to the other side of the ocean of darkness. By our past deeds and by the arrangement of superior authority, we are entangled in a network of fruited activities and have lost sight of the destination of life. Thus, we have been wandering within the universe. By the grace of the spiritual master and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we get the clue of devotional life. Due to the quality of our actions, we come to the association of the modes of material nature. And by superior arrangement, we are given a chance to enjoy the fruitive results of such activities in different types of bodies. In this way, having lost sight of their destination in life, all living entities are wandering in different species throughout the universe, sometimes getting birth in a lower species and sometimes existence in higher planetary systems. Thus, we are all wandering since the time immemorial. It is by the grace of the spiritual master and the Supreme Personality of Godhead that we get the clue of devotional life. And thus, progressive success in our life begins.
Thank you. 52.
Dear Lord, you are situated in your pure existential position of goodness. Therefore, you are the perfect representative of Supreme Lord. You are glorified by your own prowess, and thus you are maintaining the entire world by introducing Brahminical culture and protecting everyone in your line of duty as a Kshatriya. One who is elevated to the platform of goodness, one is satisfied in any condition of life. In a gradual cleansing process, one is relieved of the influence of passion and ignorance and it is situated on the platform of goodness. The result of association with the qualities of a passion of ignorance is that one becomes lusty and greedy. But when one is elevated to the platform of goodness, he is satisfied in any condition of life and is without lust and greed. This mentality indicates one's situation on the platform of goodness. One has to transcend this goodness and raise himself to the pure goodness called Vivardha Sattva or the advanced stage of goodness. In the advanced stage of goodness, one can become Krishna conscious. Therefore, Maharaj Prithu is addressed as Vivardha Sattva or one who is situated in the transcendental position.
So that's the last verse for chapter 21. So any questions before we look at some of the verses? We have 30 minutes to go.
Hare Krishna Guruji, I have just one small question. When Maharaj Pithu was getting ready for the sacrifice for a yajna, so it is really understandable to hear about the description of the transcendental body of the Lord. So here it is mentioned the body about the bodily features of Maharaj Prithu, that how he has this and that. So is it like that the reason behind is that as Lord is transcendental, his devotees are also transcendental. So it is mentioned bodily features of Maharaj Prithu, or is there any other reason to mention that?
Well, my understanding is that Prithu is an incarnation, it's a Satyavesha avatar. So everything about him is special. I'm trying to find the verse. I think
Verse number 20, 17, 18, 20.
17 to 20.
Yes, somewhere like 20. Yes, this.
Is it this one?
These are the descriptions. Here it is written.
This is the speech.
Yes.
The speech.
16.
Is it 16?
Yes, 16, 17, 18, 19. Like
16.
yes.
Okay, those verses, they are not purport, so they are not purpose. So we just all the way to 19, there was no purports. So we just jumped to 20. We read the translations all right, but we didn't have any purport. Let me just go back to it. Said 18, 19, 20. Okay, 18. 16, yeah, 16 says the chest of Maharaj Prithu was very broad. His waist was very thick. His abdomen, wrinkled by lines of skin, resembled in construction of a leaf of a banyan tree. His navel was coiled and deep. His thighs were of a golden hue, and his instep was arched. 17 says the black sleek hair on his head was very fine and curly, and his neck, like a conch shell, was decorated with auspicious lines. He wore a very valuable dhoti, and there was a nice wrapper on the upper part of his body. 18 says, as Maharaj Prithu was being initiated to perform the sacrifice, he had to leave aside his valuable dress, and therefore his natural bodily beauty was visible. It was very pleasing to see him put on a black deer skin and wear a ring of kusha grass on his finger, for this increased the natural beauty of his body. It appears that Maharaj Prithu observed all the regulatory principles before he performed the sacrifice. Yeah, so you want to know why the body of Prithu Maharaj is beautiful, or can you restate your question? Because
Yes, no, not like no. But just wanted to know that when we, when we read about the transcendental body of NOD, non NOD also, when we read about the transcendental features of Lord, like so why it is mentioned? Is there any specific reason for it, or just the reason that Prithu Maharaj is a representative or a representative of Krishna, is a devotee or a Vaishnava? So it is explained. So is there any other reason?
okay, well, is I can say that just to glorify Prithu Maharaj, these chapters glorify Prithu Maharaj, glorify his birth, glorify his appearance, glorify his coronation, glorify his body, glorify his activities, glorify his perfection, and glorify his going back home, back to Godhead. So this section of Srimad Bhagavatam is simply glorifying Prithu Maharaj, who is a Satyavesh avatar of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So therefore, because the section is for glorifying the Lord, it also talks about his bodily features. It talks about his birth. It talks about his activities. It talks about his anger. It talks about his power, his prowess. So every aspect of the king is described. So that, and he said that one who repeats the descriptions, one who hears the descriptions, become glorious. So the description of Prithu Maharaj is actually for the benefit of those who hear, of the audience, those who describe. So all these different aspects of Prithu Maharaj are given just for the purpose of our purification. The more we hear about the glories of Prithu Maharaj, the more we describe the glories of Prithu Maharaj, the more we also attain to that transcendental position. So the detailed description is actually meant for the audience, for those who are going to be hearing, for those who are going to be describing. So by doing so, they are glorifying the Supreme Lord. And by such glorification, one becomes purified. So we've heard many places the beauty of the Lord. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, we hear about the beauty of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In Srimad Bhagavatam, we hear about the beauty of Lord Krishna. In Ramayana, we hear about the beauty of Lord Ram. So all these different descriptions are actually meant for our own purification. The more we hear about the glory of the Lord, the more we hear about the beauty of the Lord, the more we hear about the wonderful qualities of the Lord, the more we become purified and the more we are attracted to hear these glories. So it is actually for our own benefit The Shukadeva Goswami is giving such wonderful, wonderful vision of Prithu Maharaj's body. Is that okay, Mataji?
Yes, yes. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. So, are there any questions? Otherwise, we will just look at some few verses. We have barely 20 minutes. If there are no questions, then I'll go right into the discussion. Text 1 talks about the opulence of natural decorations and the welcoming ceremony of Prithu Maharaj in his city, where he says real opulence is supplied by natural gifts such as gold, silver, pearls, valuable stones, fresh flowers, trees, and silken cloth. Thus, the very civilization recommends opulence and decorations with these natural gifts of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such opulence immediately changes the condition of the mind and the entire atmosphere, because the entire atmosphere becomes spiritualized. King Prithu's capital was decorated with such highly opulent decorations. So a similar description is given in the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, when Lord Krishna arrived in Dwaraka after his visit to Hastinapur. The residents of Dwaraka, they decorated Dwaraka in such a beautiful way with natural gifts. Gopura Dwara Margeshu Krita Kotaka Tornam. The city gateway, the household doors, and festoons arcs along the roads were all nicely decorated with festive signs like plantain trees and mango leaves, all to welcome the Lord. Flags, garlands, painted signs, and slogans all combined to shade the sunshine in each and every door of the residential houses. Auspicious things like curds, unbroken fruits, sugar cane, full water pots with articles for worship, incense, and candles were all displayed. So in Vedic times, this is the way important personalities were welcomed, with natural gifts, with natural decorations. And such decorations enhance the atmosphere. Actually, in Golok Vrindavan, the gifts of Golok Vrindavan are natural gifts, like we see in the case of Vrindavan itself. Krishna was always satisfied with the simple offerings of the Brijabasis: yogurt, milk, butter, fruits, garlands, and so on. These are the opulences of Vrindavan, and these are the opulences of Goloka Vrindavan. Natural resources, natural gifts, natural decorations. That is what we can find in the scriptures describing the wonderful place called Goloka Vrindavan. So no doubt or no wonder that the citizens of Prithu Maharaj are decorating the capital city of Prithu. And similarly, the citizens of Dwaraka, they are decorating the city of Dwaraka in such a glorious manner. reminding the Lord of his natural environment, his natural abode, his original place of residence, Goloka Vrindavan. So this should let us understand that in the spiritual world, everything is natural. Everything is the beauty of nature. And that makes everything sweet and relishable. And that is why Krishna, he loved to be in Gokul. He loved to be in the village. He loved to be among the cowherd men and wander in the forest of Vrindavan. Krishna loved the 12 forests of Vrindavan. Every day, Krishna would take the cows and the cowherd boys, and they would wander through the forest of Vrindavan, enjoying themselves with the simplicity of the gifts of the forest of Vrindavan. So we have to understand that natural gifts, natural environment, natural forest is Krishna's playground. And that is why it is often said that in the forest there is the mode of goodness. In the cities are the manifestations of the mode of passion. And in the drinking bars and the brothels are the places of ignorance. So certainly, when the places are decorated with such natural gifts, it brings in very good vibrations. The mode of goodness prevails. So that should be our mode. We should always decorate our temples, especially during festivals, with such natural gifts to evoke the presence of Goloka Vrindavan. And in text 5, it says that great personalities of power and opulence never become proud. The reception given to the king was full of opulence, yet he did not become proud. It is said, therefore, that great personalities of power and opulence never become proud. An example is given that a tree which is full of fruits and flowers does not stand erect in pride, but instead bends downwards to show submissiveness. This is a sign of the wonderful character of great personalities. So in the 4th canto, 3rd chapter, verse 17, it says, Vidya tapo vitapapur vaya kulai. The 6 qualities of education, austerity, wealth, beauty, youth, and heritage are for the highly elevated. One who is proud of possessing them becomes blind, and thus he loses his good sense and cannot appreciate the glories of the great personalities. So one who is divinely empowered does not display pride. He displays humility. In other words, one who is spiritually very enriched, one who is spiritually empowered, he generally becomes very meek, because he can understand the greatness of the Supreme Personality of Godhead as compared to himself. One who is spiritually advanced, he can see how great the Lord is and how small and insignificant he is. So naturally, that brings humility. But one who is not spiritually advanced, he thinks he's great, he's the greatest, and so his pride increases. So therefore, one who is spiritually endowed, one who is spiritually advanced, one who is making progress on the path of the Krishna consciousness, he generally becomes very meek. And it is said that Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami, they display such humility, such sublime humility. When they met Lord Chaitanya, they fetch a bunch of grass and they put it in between their teeth, and they were offering obeisances at a distance from Lord Chaitanya. Similarly, when Rupa Goswami and Anupama, when they met Lord Chaitanya in Allahabad, the same thing they did. The Lord was approaching them and they were running away, and they fetched a bunch of grass and put between their teeth, and they were offering prayers to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But these are very exalted personalities. Yet, because of their spiritual consciousness, their advancement, they were so meek. So it is the wealth of a devotee is humility. And that is why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is recommending in his Shastikam prayers, Trinara Pisunichena Taro Api Sahiznuna Amanena Manadena Kritaniya Sada Hari. That for one to constantly chant the holy names and relish the sweetness of the holy names, one must be as humble as the blade of grass and be as tolerant as the tree. And in such a consciousness, such a state of mind, one can chant the holy names of the Lord constantly. Actually, I'm supposed to attend a closing ceremony of a Bhakti Shastri program. They're calling my phone. So I was thinking we can end the class here. Then the verses that I would like to read, I can read them first like we did today before we go on to chapter 22 tomorrow.
Okay, Prabhuji.
Because I have to say a few words to encourage the devotees who are completing their Bhakti Shastri program in Mauritius. And so they're calling me again and again and again. So I think we should, they are never about 10 minutes or 9 minutes. We could sacrifice that for them also. So tomorrow we will start at the usual time at 7 o'clock or at 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock, right?
Yes, 6 to 9 p.m. Indian Standard Time. So what time should we start tomorrow, Prabhuji?
We will start at 6 o'clock tomorrow.
Okay, 6
to
o'clock.
9 o'clock. Yeah, 6
Okay.
o'clock to 9 o'clock.
Fine,
So in the first 20 minutes, I will just go through the few verses. Then we begin our 22nd chapter.
Yes.
So thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Looking forward to meeting all of you tomorrow. Jai
Prabhuji,
Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.
we are
Hare
very
Krishna.
thankful to you for your association, Prabhuji. Please accept our respectful obeisances. Thank you so much.
Jai Vanta Pavitarabhyas Chakra Prasnubhyaya Vacha Paritanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna.
Jai
Jai
Shri
Jai.
Prabhuji ki jai.
Prabhupada ki Jai.
Jai.